Greetings, everyone. Welcome to GameFace, episode 422 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield. Been doing this for a long damn time, like 30 years. And alongside me to also host this podcast is someone who's also been doing it for probably about 30 years, and that's Matt Keil. I don't know if we're quite that long, but we're definitely like 55 years of experience covering the games industry professionally.
I started professionally in 2000, so I'm 25 years. Old man. Let's not go crazy.
And I'm at like 28, so yeah, we're up over 50 between the two of us. Yeah. Welcome to GameFace. This is a show where we cover all the big stories in games for the week, and in this episode in particular, we're going to do something. We're going to kick it old school with GameFace a little bit today, because I'll just be honest with you, we had a bit of an issue last week. So as you guys know, the podcast is now a little bit shorter, and then after the podcast ends, Matt and I record our long-form reviews, and then we go and we produce them a lot better with 4K footage, blah, blah, blah. You guys all know that. Well, last week, we recorded, what was it? We recorded the review of
Kingdom Come, and then we
got halfway through Civ 7, and we realized there was no audio in the recordings. There's no audio. And so we realized it, and at that point, we're like, well, we'll just stop, and then we'll record the preview for Elden Ring Night Reign, and we did, and then that went up. But anyway, if you're wondering why there weren't other long-form reviews or previews that went up after last week's episode, that's why. After 10 years, we finally made a colossal mistake and screwed up. We had no audio for 2 episodes. So here's the thing. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, Matt, it is insane to me how many games are coming out right now. It's like the whole year, it was like a drip of games, and now we have like 10 that we want to cover on the show all at frickin' once. So because we missed last week with the 2 games that we recorded, we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to go old school this week. So we're going to do some reviews in the show today. So Civ 7, which was supposed to be a long-form review from last week, that's going to be in the show today. Pirate Yakuza is going to be in the show today as a review. And also, Lost Records, Bloom, and Rage are going to be in the show today as reviews. So this episode is going to be kind of like a throwback episode of GameFace. And then after that, we still have reviews to cover. So we're going to still tackle Deliverance 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And we should be able to do that a lot quicker because we already went through the whole damn thing last week. And we're also going to review Avowed after the show is over today. So those will be the 2. And here's one thing I do want to say. Like, this is a new process, a new thing that we're doing here at Sifted and at GameFace. And so there's a process of feeling it out, how it works. That's how production works. So one thing we're going to say right now is we're only ever going to be able to do 2 sort of off-show reviews per week. There's not enough bandwidth for me to get more than 2 done. So how it's going to work is when you have a week like this where you have like 6 games coming out in like a 7-day period, some of the smaller games are going to end up in GameFace as shorter reviews with not as great production values, and then we're going to pick and choose the games that we actually record later, generally the ones that are getting the most action on Sifted, looking at the metrics on Sifted as far as what you guys care about, what you're watching, what you're commenting on, and that kind of thing. So anyway, you're going to get a little bit of a taste of old school GameFace here today. It's not going to be like this every week. It's going to be a week-by-week basis, depending on which games come out. But we're going to try to review everything for you guys that we know that you guys are interested in. Sometimes they'll be in the GameFace proper show, the smaller stuff. Bigger stuff, we're going to do full-on 4K, 60 frames per second, awesome footage that actually shows what we're talking about pretty much at every freaking moment. So if you've watched some of those already, you know they're a huge improvement production-wise over what we've been doing here on GameFace. So anyway, you're getting the best of both worlds this week, I guess is the way that I'm going to put it. And a lot of it is because we totally screwed up last week and we had a bunch of recordings that had no audio in them. So anyway, that's what's happening with the show. And then, Matt, we had like some crazy breaking news like today, right?
Yeah.
Like right before the show kicked off.
Yeah, more Warner Brothers nonsense. As the chat's already talking about it, but Warner Brothers has canceled the Wonder Woman game, shut down Monolith and Player First Games, which did Multiverses, and Warner Brothers San Diego, which is a support studio. So the Zaslav bloodbath continues. They are just streamlining Warner Brothers for sale later this year after the Paramount and Skydance deal closes.
And what does that mean, the Paramount and Skydance deal closes?
Paramount and Skydance are close to a deal where Skydance would acquire Paramount Studios. Skydance being a smaller but rapidly expanding studio founded by 2 kids who went to my high school, in fact. They're mostly, I would say, mostly known for being the production partner on the Mission Impossible movies. You'll see the Skydance logo in front of all Tom Cruise's stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a
they're in games too.
Pretty good. Yeah, they did Skydance's Behemoth,
right?
Which is a weird
now
name
closing
for
down.
Now closing down, but
yep.
A lot of that going around. But yeah, so that'll be the other thing. And this is just hearsay. This is what I heard from someone I know. But because I was like, why did they buy Player First, the Multiverses studio, if they were 8 months ago, if they were just gonna shut it down?
Them, yeah.
And I was told that they had a contract to support Multiverses for multiple years, and by buying them, they made that contract null and void, so they could just shut the game and the studio down. So
dirty.
The lesson is never try.
Yeah.
Don't get into game dev, people. Just stay away.
Or if you do, just make your own game.
But even that isn't good. Like none of that works either. Like it's a terrible place to be if you care about stability and eating.
Yeah.
And now these guys are all out there looking for what
There's so many talented people.
The other thing I would note, and just because everyone's obviously posting Monolith's everything they've made, Monolith did all these things and now they're gone. It's fucking terrible, obviously. But they made Blood, Shogo, No One Lives Forever 1 and 2, Condemned 1 and 2, Fear 1 and 2. Huge.
Yeah.
They made all those in 12 years as an independent studio, and when they were acquired by Warner Brothers, and they made Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor over 16 years.
They probably worked on a bunch of stuff that was
we'll
killed.
Never see. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
They did Arkham Origins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They had 3 games in 16 years versus all those others for 12 years and whatever.
Didn't they also do Gotham Knights? Wasn't that them?
Did they do Gotham? Yeah, they did Gotham Knights.
I think so.
They did Gotham Knights.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that.
I mean, but they did have some input, but it's nothing compared to
They
what
also
they
apparently had a plan. They wanted to do a Gotham Knights 1.5. I think Schreier was reporting on that they wanted to do a 1.5 and fix a bunch of, and the boss of Warner Brothers like, no, work on this other thing we're never going to release. It's just like it's just ridiculous.
It was horrible management at Warner Brothers in the end.
Yeah,
I mean that's why Haddad lost his job, and
it's always that Warner Brothers, and so basically they're paring themselves down to basically
become attractive.
All they really have left now is NetherRealm in terms of owned studio. Obviously, there's
Rocksteady.
There's Rocksteady, and they don't own Avalanche, do they?
They do.
They do. They bought them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it, though.
So that's it. Harry Potter, Batman, and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. That was all breaking this morning. We're just getting it hot into the show here. Oh, actually, they're saying Montreal made Gotham Knights. Okay.
That's right, Montreal.
WB Montreal.
Not Monolith.
And they're still around.
Not Monolith, Montreal.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And they're still around.
And Origins, they were Montreal. So, the only thing Monolith made were the 2 Shadow of the Middle Earth games. For 16 years.
Yeah. Actually, before I get to chat, we have some special things.
And I don't think Warner Brothers San Diego made it. I think they were just a support studio. They only existed since 2019. If they put anything out that they lead developed, I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Well, Matt, it was your birthday not long ago, and a couple sifters, fans of ours, decided that they wanted to send you some presents. So, this first gift, it's not wrapped, comes from SJD Swanland. He says you should know what it means because he said you two had a little bit of a conversation together. And here you go. There's your gift number 1 from SJD Swanland.
Oh, yes, we did have.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, it is an old wuxia thing. We had a conversation about some Chinese martial arts stuff.
Okay.
That's a cool one.
Yep. So there's one, and then you have a gift from Justin Horman. And here's the gift from Justin Horman.
Oh, very.
You have to open that one. He wrapped it.
Oh.
There's Luna. The gift started opening. She's skedaddled.
Luna doesn't like paper.
Until you throw it on the ground, right?
No. Well, no, she doesn't like that either. She
really?
Like that. She doesn't like bags.
Interesting.
Oh, very nice. So this is the Transformers 40th anniversary collector's trading card. A box of them.
Oh, wow. Do you already have a bunch of those?
No, I do not have these.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't get these. I like trading cards. I got into trading card collecting with the early Marvel Universe and X-Men sets in the early 90s, but they've just become so fucking infuriating. Because the chase cards are like 2 per box now.
Oh.
And like if you want all of them, you are either buying 14 boxes or paying obscene...
And you still may not get them all.
Oh, no. You can buy them separately, but you're going to be paying...
Oh, got you.
$20-$30 a card because everybody knows how rare they are. So I didn't get into this, but I did kind of was like, well, I'm show you this. So yeah, this is a good one.
Well, maybe that'll have all those cards.
It will not. It only has 2.
They know for sure there's only 2 in each box?
Yeah, they publish. They have to publish the odds now.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually.
That was the thing. They have to say what they have.
Well, that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that trading cards had that change.
Yeah, so complete set, 40 of one single print card randomly selected, box toppers. These are box toppers, randomly inserted metal cards. They're randomly signed cards, basically, by people who worked on the old stuff.
Oh, cool.
Bob Budiansky and stuff. No, that's very cool.
Yep, there you go. Happy birthday, Matt.
This is an exclusive vintage clay stock paper collectible crowd-funded stretch goal card. Interesting. So this must be a bonus if you crowd-funded.
If you're a part of the Kickstarter.
I didn't realize they did a crowdfunding for these.
It seems like they do it for all that stuff now.
It is a safer way to spread out your financial risk on some of these things.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Happy birthday, Matt. Again, from SJD Swanland and from Justin Horman.
Well, thank you, guys.
Yep. You had a little coordination going on behind the scenes to get him to send me that stuff. It's actually been going on for like weeks now. But the funny part is, I was talking to both of those guys for the last probably couple months about this, and then both of them showed up like 2 days in a row. It's the timing couldn't have been better. So there you go. Happy birthday to Matt Keil. A couple fun gifts for him there. And we don't want to spend too much time on housekeeping here because, again, 1, it wasn't a big news week. But 2, we have 3 reviews.
Until today,
yeah. And then 2, we have 3 reviews to get through in this show. So we really can't screw around. We kind of got to jump forward. But let's just check in with chat really quickly before we get going here. East Demon, I feel for them having to scrap Wonder Woman after $100 million is rough. I mean, that's their fault. They mismanaged the project. Yeah. Vincent says Origins of Gotham Knights for WB Montreal, primarily Monolith, probably supported on everything. Okay. Vincent also says WB San Diego was a mobile studio when it was announced. People wishing you a belated birthday. AJ the Legend Watson, thank you for Twitch Prime. Hope you're doing good. Don Lionheart, are we going to get Casey? Yep, you missed the beginning of the show. Don Lionheart, just sit tight, brother. You're gonna get everything you want.
I think they mean he means are you going to break them out into their own videos?
Yeah, I mean I said that already at the beginning of the show. I said that Kingdom Come will be its own video, and that Civ 7 will be in the show.
Right, but he's saying, will you break like Civ? Even though we talk about it in the show, will you take Civ?
No, we never do that. It'll just be a part of GameFace, just like it always is. Let's see what else we got here. Retro Modern Gamer WB. They killed Monolith, who made awesome retro. Yeah, you guys are just talking about Monolith. Fire Native, thank you for Twitch Prime. Earned a hype chest. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it's a loot box, and it plays something apparently. I'll share the rewards.
Oh, it's the sound emote.
It's a choo-choo sound.
You have to hit return. Well, you have to hit chat, I guess. Yeah.
There we go. All right, there we go. What else we got here? Mellow Pintor, thank you for gifting subs to folks. Jose Holiday, thank you for Twitch Prime. We're getting towards the end of the month here, so a lot of you guys have done it already. This is for Vidya Games, thank you for Twitch Prime. Khalib Twalai, look at you dropping a bunch of subs in the chat. Thank you, man. Thank you for gifting subs to the Sifters. Renart 1999, Khalib Twalai, thank you. Cinetike, thank you for Twitch Prime. Justin Horman, subscribing at Tier 3 after giving Matt his present. That's kind of awesome. Swanland also is a Tier 1. Thank you, brother. That's awesome. Henry Pumpkins, thank you for Twitch Prime. Mitchell Ness, thank you for Twitch Prime. Rock and Roll 458, Talimper, and I think that's it for today so far. Always try, now that the show is in motion, always try to wait till we have a little bit of a break to give us your Twitch Prime so we can thank you on the show, because that's very important to me that I thank you guys for that. Because I realize a lot of people you give your Twitch Prime to, they do not thank you. And so I think it is a difference. TV Hardy, thank you for Twitch Prime. What happens to the Nemesis patent? That's a good question, Nightwing.
Well, Warner Brothers will still have that. That won't go anywhere.
It just probably won't be used.
Probably won't be used. The question is, does this change or free up the rights snafu for No One Lives Forever? With obviously I'm not saying re-releasing classic or remastering these classic games, even though they are very good, is worth all the jobs that have been lost here. But that is a if the dissolution of Monolith frees up the rights of that to just be Warner Brothers, it is entirely possible that someone, GOG or somebody, could go to them and be like, hey, can we have these things you clearly don't fucking care about and actually do something with them?
Yeah, and probably get them at a decent price too.
Yeah. So that would be the only potentially positive thing that could come out of this, is maybe Nulf might come back in some form. Who knows? I mean, who knows? Maybe the Monolith people will be able to reform. Some of them will be able to reform a new studio somewhere. Certainly, I would not be. If I was some VC guy, I would certainly look at their track record and be like, yeah, I'd go in on you guys.
Well, WB kind of ruined their track record.
Right, but you know,
if you look at it realistically,
the history of it, and you understand that they're working for idiots for the last 16 years. What can you do?
Yeah,
I mean, you're really it's really wrong. I mean, I know they're doing it to devalue the company to some degree, to make them a more attractive purchase, but it's just, you're looking at this. The even before that was really on the table, the mismanagement of a 100-year-old recognizable studio brand and everything they hold is crazy.
It's pretty crazy. It really is, man.
And you've even, there are people that were like, how, why would even we want a Wonder Woman game? Who cares if it got canceled? And people are like, well, because it's one of their big three. It's it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Like, and her movie made $800 million. I'm like, yeah. Like, actually, the question here is like, how did it take them 10 years to make a Wonder Woman movie?
Because they didn't strike while that iron was hot at all.
No, they weren't ready for that at all. No. There was no synergy there.
Yeah, they're being reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah.
That's
we haven't had a Batman game in how long?
Yeah, that's on the way now, though.
We'll see.
Finally, yeah, we'll see. We will. So anyway, let's see. Anyone else jumped in here at the last minute with their Twitch Prime before we get going? Oh, right there. Ilor Darian. I Lord Arian? Thank you.
I Lordarian, I would say.
Lordarian. Thank you, brother or sister. The Abram, did someone draft Fable? No, we knew better. No, we both knew better. Neither one of us thought it was coming this year. So yeah, that.
You were a little surprised I didn't think it was coming this year.
Yeah, well, because they had announced the date, three times?
It was in the trailer, yeah. But as we learned from God of War Ragnarok, I do not believe the date in a trailer if it's just a year.
Yeah.
Never trust that.
Yep. Okay, let's get on with the show. Like I said, we don't have a lot of time to mess around today. We got stuff to get to. Okay, we're going to kick things off with the PS5 Pro. We got data, the first real sales data from the PlayStation 5 Pro this week. And as of right now, the PS5 Pro, its sales are falling well behind the PS4 Pro. Now, Matt, that may seem alarming to some people, but to me, it's not that alarming. Well,
certainly not surprising.
Right, because PS5 Pro is an extra $300 more than PS4 Pro. That alone, Matt, blows my freaking mind.
Yeah, that doesn't even track with inflation.
Right. Inflation hasn't almost doubled
in
the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, it really shows. I mean, what does that show, actually? Does it show that PlayStation just thinks it's in a position where it can just... is it hubris PlayStation again?
I don't know. I mean, they know it's for enthusiasts only. And, I guess it's the... because people, the hardcore people do tend to complain a lot about performance and how underpowered they think the hardware is, which I think would happen no matter how powerful the hardware is.
Yeah.
And so you put it out so, the people that have a problem with that can buy that thing and hopefully not have a problem anymore. But they seem to recognize that even for PS4 Pro, they recognize that this was not going to be a mainstream product in the same way that the baseline system is. And they must know that because they're not unaware that the best selling Xbox is the Series S. Mm-hmm. So they just Sony's not afraid of luxury products, I guess.
Yeah.
There's certain Bravias that you're back in the day that you knew that no one was buying if they weren't a millionaire, I guess. So
yeah.
I guess this is just sort of one
the
of their
extension
things.
Of that.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
It's weird to me that I guess the long term, kind of the long range goal is if you keep making stuff kind of target the Pro. I wonder if it's sort of the opposite of Microsoft's approach where everything has to run well on the S, where it's eventually it's well, if you don't want it to look bad or run chuggy, then go get a Pro.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And it's also sort of a mid-step in preparation for the PS6, so you can have this thing as sort of your thing where it's well, if you don't want to spend $1,000 on a PS6, you can just spend $700 on a PS5.
Is that where it's headed?
It feels like
it. It feels like it. So here's the other thing. So first of all,
Because the usual, the old system doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. You'd expect like the price drop from the previous gen system, and then the new system would kind of take over that price point, and that just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's not how it works anymore. So basically, I'm wondering if PlayStation realized well before the rest of us that this generation was over, PlayStation 1, and that Xbox was going to eventually do what it's doing now and exit the hardware. And I wonder if it knew that and it had a little bit of hubris and was like, you know what? We can probably maybe turn a profit on the PlayStation 5 Pro because we're not going to have any competition. One thing that struck me when we recorded a recent episode of Pactor Factor where Pactor was talking about how the PS5 is tracking slightly ahead of PS4 in sales, and a lot of people say, oh, well, that's proof that you're wrong, Pactor, consoles aren't going away. But Pactor's point that I never realized on my own is that, no. Yeah, it's tracking ahead because it has no competition. Because nobody's buying Xbox anymore. And so he looks at the data, and he says, look, normally by this time, Xbox would have sold an extra 25 or 30 million pieces of hardware. So the truth is yeah, a few of those people have bought a PlayStation 5, which helps the PlayStation 5 sell around where the PS4 did. But total overall, people buying consoles to play bleeding edge games that we like, that number is way down.
Well, because it's not a console market anymore; it's a PlayStation market.
It is, yeah. I mean, to me, that was a revelation. I never thought about it. I'm like, well, yeah, where are all those Xbox buyers going?
That still doesn't mean like consoles are going away.
No. And he doesn't think that either. He's like, they're just going to diminish over time as far as the number of people that are playing consoles. But
unless and until someone comes in and tries to fill that niche. Like somewhere, someone is going to be dumb enough to do that. Not like right now, maybe not next generation or whatever, but someone, some dipshit in a solid colored T-shirt with a sport coat over it is going to look at this market with PlayStation wide open on the field and be like, we can get in their way.
Yeah.
And they're going to do something stupid, and it's going to, we're going to have another, there will be a new third place.
Yeah.
Someday. You know that. Someone is going to be like, oh, we could do that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be some dumbass. Like, it's going to be some, Stadia style. Not necessarily streaming, but that kind of thing where it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like, do you not, like, it's like someone parachuting behind enemy lines in the middle. So it's like, they'll never expect it. Well, no, but they're going to be able to handle it pretty easily when it happens. Like, what are you doing? Like, so I do expect someone is going to take a crack at that at some point.
The other X factor,
maybe a Chinese company.
Maybe, yeah.
Because and actually, I wouldn't be as skeptical if it was a Chinese company because they do actually have the backing and the audience back home to sort of support something that like basically expanding out to the West and the rest of the global market would be an afterthought.
Yeah, the X factor to me is Switch 2. So these consoles launched, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, after Switch had its big honeymoon period where people were buying 25, 30 million consoles a year. That kind of waned over time, and then people started buying PS5s, and some people bought Xbox Series. What happens when Nintendo goes back into that power cycle again? What happens to the PlayStation 5 then?
Power cycle of what?
Of sales, where it's selling 25, 30 million units a year, and people don't have as much disposable income because they're buying the new Switch as they did before.
It doesn't affect anything, I don't think.
No?
I think because the Switch is a handheld, and people are going to either buy one or both.
Yeah.
I do not think one replaces the other for pretty much anyone, unless you're a really hardcore Sony or Nintendo fanboy.
Well, I think some families are like, hey, we have a budget for gaming consoles. Like, you need to figure out which one you want, and then we'll get it. Maybe in 3 years, we'll get you another one.
Sure, but I think a lot of cases, I think the kids are getting Switches, and the dad or the mom is having
gets the PlayStation.
Yeah. Or the PlayStation's the family console, and the kids have the Switches to keep them quiet. Maybe that becomes unfeasible as the prices of these things rise. Certainly, I'm expecting $400 as a base price for the Switch 2, probably raised higher by tariffs in the U.S. When the time comes. Start saving money now, everybody.
If you can find one.
But I think those are two very different use cases, especially because, again, it's not acceptable to me, but plenty of people just play everything third party on the Switch if it's available anyway. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, if Dad has a PS5 and Billy and Judy have Switches, they're playing a lot of the same stuff, but they don't have to share the TV. You know, I think some of that's part of
Switch
part
2,
of the
that
point.
definitely will be more the case
Yeah.
because it's more powerful than the first Switch.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that doesn't run on the Switch is stuff you wouldn't want your kids playing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's basically what it comes down to is, and again, I wouldn't have thought the Switch would have been cheap enough to be we're going to get 3 of them for the whole family console, but they did. I mean, people, there are plenty of families I know who spent $1,000+ on Switches over the course of the Switch's
Despite
lifetime.
being in a horrible economy.
Just unbelievably bad
We're also
economy.
poor, but we
Like
can only afford 3
Every
consoles.
single person has their own fucking OLED screen. It can't be that bad. So I don't know.
So what do you think? So you're saying PlayStation has a monopoly, which I agree.
Pretty much.
I agree with that, honestly. What happens now? I mean, has this ever happened? It really hasn't.
I mean, it pretty much did for a time. Like, I would say more or less
PS1 and 64.
PS1 and 64 and
Pretty much was
a
a
little
monopoly.
bit of the until the 360, PlayStation pretty much ruled the roost.
Yeah.
Nintendo was more competitive than but it was always the same thing. It's like Nintendo puts an exclusive out, everybody loses their fucking mind because it's one of the best games of the year.
Maybe it sells some hardware.
And we go back to ignoring the N64 for the rest
Yeah.
of the year while everybody plays PlayStation games.
Yeah.
And that pretty much continued until the Xbox 360 really
Yeah,
made
that's accurate.
Microsoft a force.
Yep.
And so I would say it's probably going to be something akin to that. And that was pretty good years.
Yeah.
Like they weren't. I mean, they were pretty bad years if you're a Sega fan, but that's not relevant to the point.
How will Switch? Do you think Switch 2, because it is a little bit more powerful, does have a chance to maybe take a little bit out of that monopoly?
No, because it isn't more powerful.
Yeah.
It's more powerful than the Switch, but that's more powerful than a 2012.
But you're right.
NVIDIA
Relatively,
Shield.
it's going to be
It's going to be the same
Switch
differential.
to PS4 or PS5 is going to be the same as Switch
Like, you
2
ain't
to...
playing Black Myth Wukong on the Switch 2.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting thing, is
Unless you're streaming
if
it.
some Chinese company put out a console where that's the only place you can play those Chinese import.
Wow.
Like the Black Myth Wukongs and the like those. Those
that
games,
might actually be successful.
That's if that's the only place you can play. I mean, but it doesn't make any sense to do that. But on consoles.
But if you just sell it in China, you
sell
can
it in
move
China,
lots of units.
But if that's if the only place you could play Genshin Impact 2 on a console, not PC. PC would obviously be universal, but on a console, don't give it to Sony. Put it only on this thing. That's where you want to play that. It's the only place you can play Infinity Nikki 2 or anything like that. That could move. I mean, at the very least, you would kind of create a very dedicated hardcore market, which normally has been Sony's for the last 25 years.
Right.
It would be a very interesting power play. I don't know if it would work.
Well, the other thing I would usually say is if one company has a monopoly in the console market, then they're not really pressured to put out software on a regular basis. So I would assume that PlayStation would then not have as much first-party software, but it has already done that.
Yeah, that already happened.
It is the market leader.
I don't think that would happen. I think Sony would continue to do that in large part because Sony as a company is depending on PlayStation at this point, to feed them IP to use for other purposes, especially through the Sony
Film,
Pictures
TV.
Well, because they don't have anything else. Like the only thing Sony Pictures has that anchors it in any way at the box office right now is the rights to Spider-Man. And they just blew that whole thing by making all these stupid villain pictures. That Craven movie has basically murdered that sub-franchise for the time being. And
Luna's
throwing up in the
sick.
hallway. Another hairball. And, Last of Us won a Golden Globe. There's a lot of prestige there.
Yeah.
They're doing all these other shows. They're doing Horizon. They're doing et cetera, et cetera. They need that PlayStation
Pipeline.
division to create. That's the only place their
the
new stuff
IP's
is coming
already
from.
there, though. I mean, I honestly could see a point where PlayStation is like, you know what? F it. We don't need to make games anymore.
But look how recent Horizon is.
Right.
Look how recent
It is, but they could start farming that out to third-party developers to make the games for them,
Yeah, but that's not hubris, is it?
I just know that PlayStation was really freaked out by the cost of game development.
Right. Well, they were freaked out by the cost of gas development.
Yeah.
With no return.
They look at Insomniac's games and Naughty Dog's in the court filings. They were kind of freaking out about those.
Insomniac's games, the Insomniac game that cost a lot was Spider-Man 2. And that was a lot of ballooning stuff over some other thing. And the funny thing is, they still didn't lose any. Even if
they made a ton of money.
Even if you just take the revenue from Spider-Man 1, it paid for all of it. All that.
Yep.
The Spider-Man 1 revenue was something like $1.8 billion. Just that game and merch tie-ins to that game was 1.8 something. Or maybe I might be getting the exact number. It was over.
No, it was a lot of money.
It was almost $2 billion.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't matter at that point.
What's up,
How
girl?
You feel better?
You feeling better?
Yeah. So I think I think, and obviously that's not their IP. The amount to which Sony is dependent on Spider-Man is actually very amazing.
I could see
pun
PlayStation
intended.
though being like, why are we taking any risk when we don't need to anymore?
Well, I'd say because their single-player boutique experiences generally are not risks.
Yeah, they're pretty reliable.
Like
yeah.
Days Gone is an outlier.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like
they usually do make their money.
I think what's going, and I think we'll see this as we start to see whatever they're working on. Get announced as these the game, live service
stuff goes away
to the
and
new projects. We're gonna see all this project going to be like Last of Us and God of War and Ghost. Because look what they're still making. They're still doing Ghosts of Yotei. They're still doing. They're doing an update for the Days Gone of all fucking things. They're still doing Intergalactic. That boutique single player cinematic experience isn't going anywhere because they know that's A, their bread and butter, and B, the easiest way to convert that into another medium. And the other medium is where they make even more money.
Well, I'm looking 5-10 years down the road when it's cemented that they are a monopoly. Right now, they're like, it feels like we have a monopoly, but do we? But in 5 years, they're going to be like, hot damn, we do. Like,
sort of, but like, who knows?
When the PlayStation 6 launches and there's no competition at all.
But also, that's exactly what I'm saying. Who knows what lunatic decides to see in a window of opportunity there.
Yeah, it's true.
It may not last that long.
Unprecedented times we're living through right now. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But, I think a lot of people just keep looking at that. Is PlayStation 5 outselling PS4? That's not all that matters in this. Like, there's other stuff bubbling up below the surface. And I think Pachter did a good
wait
job
until
of
Elon decides he's going to launch his own AI-powered console that only has games made by AI on it.
Yeah, if he's not in prison by then.
And call it the Xbox.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's hilarious.
And then act like he doesn't know why everyone's acting weird about it.
Yep. So anyway, that's the latest on the. There's no console war. It's over. I think we've all come to that conclusion.
And
at this
been
point.
over for a long time.
It has. All that was left was the crying, and now the crying is over. And now we've all turned the page.
I've still seen some crying.
Yeah, not as much as I really thought, though. I'll be honest. Like, I don't spend that much time on social media anymore. But
how many Xbox fans are there?
True. Left. I mean, there's about 18 million.
Yeah.
Because that's about how many consoles they've sold.
I mean, that was two of those are me, and I'm not crying.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Not everybody bought an Xbox as a fanboy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're about to move on to our next topic, but before we do that, here's a word from our sponsor, LS Cream. LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted. That's right, folks. Go to creamls.com/sifted and Cray Mass dat ass. Cray Mass definitely makes a huge difference in LS Cream. It is part of their ancestral recipe. I can just say it does taste a little bit like other stuff, but it definitely has its own flavor that sets it apart. I love it. You're going to love it. It mixes with everything pretty much perfectly. Just put a little bit in some milk or with your coffee. It's delicious there too. Go to creamls.com/sifted. There's a store locator there so you can get it local, and there's a way so you can order it and get it shipped to you. It's pretty much at every Bevmo. If you go to a Bevmo, they got tons of it there. If there's one nearby, you just head on in and get yourself a bottle of LS Cream and Cray Mass. Dad ass. All right, it's time for our next topic. Rumors have been swirling for the last week, and it's been really interesting. So it all started with a pro skater on this very popular skateboarding podcast. I think it's called like The Nine or something like that. It's like the only skateboarding podcast, really. And it's just a couple old skaters who show like the latest clips or whatever from skate videos and bring people on. And one of the skaters came on there, and he just off the cuff mentioned like, oh yeah, they're going to be announcing this new Tony Hawk thing that I'm in here in the next like month or whatever. And people were like, what? Like, because people don't get it, you know? They don't realize that in the games industry, that's a huge deal to announce
also,
that.
like, more and more you see like one of these things leak in part, even from people who are experienced in promotional stuff and doing things like that, because they don't know that these companies keep these games under wraps so long.
Right.
Like, you'd know about a new album usually longer than you know about most of these games. Like, you know, I'm sure he worked on that long enough ago that the idea that it wouldn't be known by now was crazy to him.
Yeah, you're right, because he probably did his thing with that game like 10 months ago or whatever, or maybe longer. You're right. So anyway, he shares on this skateboarding podcast that a new Tony Hawk is coming, and to their credit, somehow the gaming press picked up on it, which is kind of cool. Somebody was watching that podcast that I watch sometimes. And they picked up on it and reported on it. And at first, people were like, oh, he's just talking out of his butt or whatever. Or he just, like, to your point, he just didn't know that it's a big deal and people don't get the games industry, you don't work in it or whatever. And then things started happening. So there was a tease in Call of Duty Black Ops 6 where there was, like, a little, like, thing in one of the maps that said, hey, Tony Hawk announcement.
And you never know. Like, he might have been told to go do that.
And that's what I was getting at. So then the next day, they launch a reworked version of this map for Call of Duty that's just basically a big skate park. And one room in the skate park basically has a countdown for a new Tony Hawk's game in there. And then everybody knew. And then you start thinking, and you're like, this was probably all by design. Like, they paid him to go on the 9 podcast and mention it and act like he didn't really know it was a big deal. Right. Because look, all that stuff...
It was all a work that was meant to look like a shoot, and then they worked themselves into a shoot.
It was. I mean, it was, because they had all that stuff ready to go inside Black Ops 6. So it was all a plan. It's very clever. But it goes to show you, like, a lot of times we're being manipulated by marketing, and you have no idea. You just don't. You think, oh, this is kind of a cool off-the-cuff thing. This guy shouldn't have said this. Wow. And you know, the hosts of the 9 are like, wow, this is awesome. It's great for us.
What is an old guy skate podcast about?
I kind of mentioned it. They go and they watch like new skate videos and they comment on them. It's kind of like Let's Plays for like skate videos.
Okay, so it's not like back in my day.
No, they do that too.
We nollied both ways uphill when we cut school.
They do that too. Except they say back in my day we only skated one way. Like now people skate both ways. They're like ambidextrous. But they bring old skaters on and share stories about partying and how the old...
So they don't call it Goofy Foot anymore? It's just foot?
It's just skating
just
now.
Skating?
Yeah. I mean, I can't skate both ways. So to me, there is a goofy foot and a common foot. But for most skaters now, no, it's not. So anyway, like... a lot of the show is just talking about skate videos or bringing old pros on to reminisce about how crazy the party scene was and the skate scene back in the day. Because it was insane in the 80s and 90s. So they'll just tell war stories about what it was like when being at the beginning of skateboarding and that kind of stuff. They'll bring younger guys on to talk about what it's like to talk to old skaters. It's kind of funny, honestly. I'm really into skating. I don't watch it that much, so that should tell you something. But anyway, that was all work. That was all a plan. That was all scoped out by Activision. I'm sure they told the people at the podcast it was happening. And at the end of the day, we all got suckered and fooled by. I was guilty too. I thought he had just said something out of turn. As it turns out, it was all planned out. Now, on to the news, which is that there is a remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skate 3 and 4 on the way. A lot of people consider Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 the pinnacle of the franchise. I was working at GameSpot when it launched in 2001.
Yeah, that was the perfect 10, right?
It was a perfect 10. Jeff Gerstmann and Ryan worked together on that review, and they gave it a perfect 10, and it was a big deal at GameSpot. At that point, I think there were 3 perfect 10s or something on the whole site ever.
Yeah, it was Ocarina.
Ocarina. It was a Square Enix RPG that I can't remember what it was.
Oh, Vagrant Story.
No.
Wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. But I do remember.
I don't know what else it would have been.
It was. It's a Square Enix RPG that a lot of people don't think is a perfect 10. There was a lot of angst about that. But there was only 3, and this ended up being the 4th one. And so it was like a thing where they called us all in. Chrono Cross, yeah.
Yeah, that game is not even a 7
in
my book.
But it was a thing where they brought the whole editorial team into a meeting room, and they're like, look, we're going to give this a perfect 10. Does anybody here have any objections to it? Nobody else had really played it at that point, because Ryan and Jeff had kind of been bogarting the code that we had for it. So we're just like, oh, I guess. Like, all right.
Yeah, Tony Hawk 3 is where I checked out of the series entirely.
Yeah.
Like I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it completely changed how you play.
Yeah.
Because it added the revert, which allowed you to link tricks between obstacles.
Didn't like any of it. They stopped building the levels so well.
Yeah.
The nollie plus the revert meant that they no longer had to build so many like intricate lines into the level design, and that was like exactly what I loved about 1 and 2, and so that was the end of Tony Hawk.
Yeah, like they used to build their levels almost like a roller coaster.
Yeah,
ride.
it was like a platformer.
Yeah.
It was a platformer that happened to be on a skateboard.
Yeah.
And that was
and
the
then
end of that.
when they changed it for 3, it's like, here's just a big area, do whatever the hell you want.
Yep, and I didn't like that.
But a lot of people did, and
I think it's much more appropriate to skateboarding, but I didn't like it as a skateboarding game. I liked it as a platformer.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I was a skater. I was still skating pretty hardcore when this game came out, to be honest with you. And I wanted the old style. I was like, look, it is more accurate and true to life, but that doesn't mean it's fun.
Right.
It's just like I reviewed Amped Freestyle Snowboarding at GameSpot, and I gave it like a 5 or something. I don't know if I've ever been badgered by people more in my entire life than over that review score. Yeah, and I gave it that score because it was not fun. It was realistic. It was just not fun.
Yeah, that was. I mean, people still do that, but at that period, people were obsessed with the realism. Like it's realistic. It's realistic. Yeah, so what? Like because it was hard to do things that were realistic, but realistic doesn't necessarily mean good game.
Yeah. Well, the fun part about it to me was that Xbox had just launched. I was like, where did these fanboys come from?
Realistic would mean as soon as you fall off the board, you can't play the game for 3 more days.
Right. Exactly. And I was just like, where'd these people come from? Xbox has existed for like 2 freaking years. How do they have fanboys already? Like, what the hell is going on here? But anyway, I digress.
There was a lot of people that just jumped from Sega to Microsoft because they weren't Sony.
No, you're right.
Or Nintendo.
Yeah, you're right.
And there were a lot of people that were just like, a lot of the Xbox weirdos early on, I remember were just straight up people who wanted Sony to die.
Yeah.
Like they wanted Sony out of gaming because to them gaming was Nintendo and Sega. And Microsoft was sort of like the best they had.
Yeah.
And that was
Microsoft also kind of partnered up a little bit with Sega.
Yeah, they partnered with Sega. Microsoft did a pretty good job kind of like, picking up what was available to like put, that launch lineup other than Halo is garbage.
Yeah.
But like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
They figured it out eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they're still around.
Yeah.
They had to have figured it out.
But yeah, the shift in the console wars for that was very interesting in terms of who picked the Microsoft side of things.
Yep. So anyway, a lot of people do think that this was the pinnacle of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I fall somewhere in the middle.
I love that the pinnacle, as you're saying, the pinnacle is him just standing there getting points.
Well, those are free. That's the freestyle.
Yeah, the freestyle stuff was just silly.
It was silly, and that is gone now, or at least it has been gone for the last couple entries. So I feel like there's going to be some kind of an audience for this. I don't think it'll be as big as 1 and 2 because, to your point, Matt, I think the average player who wasn't ever a skateboarder liked the first 2 Tony Hawk games before it started becoming like crazy complicated and it was no longer like a roller coaster, like amusement park ride. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I don't think this 3+4 is going to be anywhere near as successful as 1+2.
It'll still be fine. It'll do well, I think. But I also like. So, is this the end of the Tony Hawk remasters? You think we're going to get like?
They're not going to do
American,
whatever,
and all, American Underground and all.
No.
That.
Project 9, that was the other
Project
one.
9
yeah, they're not going to do any of that stuff. I don't think. I think this is the end.
Mm-hmm. we're not go back to the glory days of Bam.
I mean, the
narrating everything.
He still skates, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
But he's like overweight and like it's really bizarre. He's just living on his name now. He still has that crazy house though. He never sold that. My question is like, when are we going to get a new one?
I don't know.
Do you think ever?
Probably not. I mean, we'll see. I think everyone's waiting to see how Skate 4 does.
Mm-hmm. And that is not tracking in a good direction.
Doesn't sound good.
In my humble opinion, it's looking pretty rotten.
It seems Luna likes it.
Yeah, Luna's watching the skating. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
She does love it. Look at her. Why is that? I wonder.
The movement is obvious.
Yeah, she doesn't pay attention to any other games, but this one she is.
Yeah, she's watching that.
That's funny.
It's like how Rampage used to watch the Winter Olympics because there was a dark figure on the white background.
Look, there you can see her. She's looking right at the TV and the camera. That's crazy. That's hilarious. Yeah. Mitchell Ness says Underground was fun. The story was silly. Yeah, I mean, as they started to try to make them more about like plots and stories, and I'll be honest with you, I've mentioned on this show many times that they have yet to make a really great skateboarding game that has an awesome story in it that really explores all the different personalities that you run into in that scene. But I don't think this franchise is ever going to do it.
No, the closest I think anyone's really gotten to that is Jet Set Radio.
No, you're right. No, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're
which
right.
isn't even skateboarding.
But they get the culture better.
The culture right.
They understand that part of it. And it's odd that all the consultants that they could get on this game have never figured out yet.
Well, it's because no one's going to ever have the balls to really embrace the punk side of skateboarding in a way that they don't think is going to alienate the mainstream audience.
Yeah,
because,
that's a good point.
Like, if you really wanted to pick that properly, you're going to piss off half the people.
Or alienate.
Because now it's going to be woke. Because
punk rock is
all
woke.
These dumb shits don't realize that that's the whole point.
I mean, that is the irony of punk, is that punk is 1,000% woke.
It's the whole point.
It is. It's the whole point. It really is. So anyway, that's the latest on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. We're supposed to get a official announcement on like March 4th or something like that.
Bones. Love it.
Yeah. So we should get final confirmation, but it's pretty much a done deal. That was rated this morning. It came out that the 3+4 has been rated in Singapore or something like that.
It's got to be in the next couple months.
Yep. So we'll still get an announcement on that pretty soon. But anyway, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 remaster is coming.
Did they ever have Animal Chin as a hidden character?
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe I don't remember it.
Nobody ever did that.
I don't think so. Because Pal Peralta owns that.
Right. But Pat Peralta likes money.
But Pal Peralta also licenses out his board graphics and everything else, so why wouldn't it license out that character? I don't know. I don't think so, though. Yeah.
I suppose.
I also think only people our age will know who Animal Chin is.
And I suppose that those who are searching to unlock Animal Chin have already unlocked him. So.
That's awesome. Some of you guys may get that, some of you may not.
That is a pretty deep cut.
I'm surprised that you know Animal Chin.
It's a movie.
It is.
It is because it's a movie.
But it's a skate video, you know?
Yeah, but it was a movie.
You're right. It did have like a plot in it.
I saw that because there was a period, I don't remember why. I think we finished our lesson plan in 5th grade like 2 weeks early. So our teacher basically said, because it was really nice spring weather and stuff and everybody was feeling like, she's like, let's just watch movies for the rest of the year. And so we started doing a thing where like we would have a period in the middle of every day where somebody would bring in a movie. Everyone would ask permission and you get to bring in a movie. And I think it was Bernie Affronti brought in Bones Brigade 3, The Search for Animal Chin, and we watched that day.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. The only other movie I remember watching in that period was Top Gun because she was like a super Christian and she freaked out about the sex scene and fast forwarded through it. I very specifically remember Bones Brigade 3 because it was so different from everything else, and
it had like a plot in it,
and because Bernie and all those guys had the skeleton, the skeleton logo on their binders and everything, and finally I got to see what that was.
What it came from?
A skateboarder
right?
person.
You didn't know where it was. What it's coming from.
They tried to teach me how to skateboard. I just couldn't fucking do it. I mean, they really did try. They're the nicest kids.
Yeah.
They tried, and I just could not. I was not coordinated enough to do that.
I played every sport, skateboarding and golf. The two most difficult sports in the world by a mile. No other sports even come close to those two.
I was okay at golf for a while, but I just didn't have the time and the patience to stick with it.
The only thing I've ever done in my whole life, and I still suck, golf. I mean, I can play. Like, I don't embarrass myself, but I've been playing since I was like 9 years old. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
I absolutely embarrass myself, 100%.
All right, so there you go. That's the latest on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 remasters coming. Should be announced soon. Maybe even shadow drops pretty soon. Next,
that would be a good thing to drop during a presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, a story that was kind of ruined earlier by chat because you guys mentioned it and we kind of talked about it briefly. Fable has been delayed to 2026. Again, I don't think too many people are surprised by that.
Not shocking.
I mean, I didn't look, but I wonder how many people selected it in our SIFTD Fantasy Challenge.
A fair number from what I saw. But
yeah.
As you'll recall, I stayed all the way.
Me too.
Away from
I didn't even, and I go crazy in the Fantasy Challenge. Even I didn't draft Fable in the Fantasy Challenge.
And I was like, nope, you can have it.
So they delayed the game, but as a make good, they gave us a bunch of new gameplay. And this gameplay shows off the game more than anything before it. Like, it actually shows what you're actually doing in the game. So, delayed to 2026, but at least they gave us a little nugget of something here. There's the werewolves from Fable, which are kind of an iconic enemy in the franchise, which, wow.
The Balverines.
Yeah, I mean, That's quite an upgrade from the previous Fable games.
And they're usually some of the most dangerous enemies, too.
Yeah. So I think what they showed looks pretty good.
Visually it looks amazing.
It really does, yeah. And I'm not disappointed that it was delayed because there's so many damn good games. And I think, Matt, this shows the turning point for me with Xbox is here. Mm-hmm. Because Xbox has enough games now that this was delayed, and I was like, okay, because there's so many other ones that are coming.
There's plenty of other things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just played Avowed. Like,
if this is getting delayed, also, it feels like Outer Worlds 2 is coming for this year.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to make it.
That would make the window there available for that game, yeah.
Because there is some overlap between the audiences for that and this.
Yeah.
It's, action RPG kind of thing.
But it is interesting, finally starting to see Xbox's strategy, buying all these studios, finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, took a while. Took a generation.
It did. Basically. Or maybe more. Like a gen and a half almost, really. Because for, 10 years straight, it was just Halo, Gears, Forza.
Yeah.
Halo,
Gears, Forza. Remember talking about the initial rumors that Playground was being assigned some kind of action game back, in the studio with the big window.
Right.
Like, that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. Yep. So, anyway, I don't know if you guys are upset about this. I just want this game to be as good as possible. And because there are so many other great games coming out in 2025, I'm totally cool giving them another year with this to polish the living crap out of it.
Yeah, anything. I mean, I'll wait as long as I need to get a Fable that actually lives up to the promise of what Fable has always had the potential to be.
And this game
Fable's such a great idea. And, it's just they've never really done anything that lives up to the idea.
And technology has not caught up to this game. It doesn't look old. I mean, it still looks like it's one of the best looking games in the industry. So I'm A-okay with Fable being delayed into next year. It would be nice to play it this year, but I think we're going to have plenty of other things to sink our teeth into. And then this will just be something nice for 2026. And I'm sure as the year goes on, other games are going to get delayed and pushed into next year. We'll see how that all plays out. But Fable, unfortunately, now is one of those games. Next up. This might be an interesting topic to you, Matt. So we talked a little earlier about how these horrible things are going on at Warner Brothers Interactive right now. But I think maybe we did get a slight ray of light this week. So James Gunn and what's the other guy's name? Peter Safran. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I know. He works with Gunn on things, yeah.
So those two have now become sort of the face, believe it or not, of WB video games.
Well, they've handed Gunn basically full control over the DC everything because he seems to be the only person who knows
who gets
anything, gets it at all, has a plan for some of it. And everybody fucking made fun of him for starting his version of the DCU with Creature Commandos, but you know what? Everybody liked that.
Right.
That was pretty good.
I mean, that's kind of goal one at this point. Make stuff people like.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, yeah, who knew?
I mean, that's kind of where they're at.
I do believe. I mean, we'll see. It could go. Either we don't know until the rubber hits the road and stuff. But I believe that if his Superman movie is any good, and I have pretty strong belief it is. I think that's $1 billion movie.
Oh yeah, if it's good, for sure.
A good Superman, the first good Superman movie in 45 years.
Wow, that's hard to believe.
That was when Superman 2 was 1980. No disrespect to Brandon Routh.
Yeah,
he did his best. I will say this about Superman Returns: it's not a very good movie, but that plane rescue scene is one of the best Superman scenes ever put to film. Because
it's really good.
Because that plane rescue scene storyboarded for Superman 3. And they just couldn't. They didn't have the tech to do it.
Right.
And so you were basically. It's why was that scene so good? Because it's been workshopped for 20 years.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah.
It's why Episode 3 is the best Star Wars prequel because that's the one that was in George's head since the 70s.
Right. And then he had to make the others in short order.
Which, by the way, is getting a 20th anniversary release in April.
Are you kidding me, dude? Oh my God, hashtag old. But to your point, Gunn and Safran have been handed the keys. They were speaking at a DC Studios presentation, and they're handling pretty much the movies and the video games. They said that the next Batman or the next game that they have their fingers in won't launch for a couple years. I'm assuming that's Rocksteady's next Batman game.
It's either that or something Montreal's doing.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
But they're saying 2 years from now, roughly, we should finally get the first look at stuff that they have worked on at DC for the video games. And then they talked about NetherRealm, what they're going to do. I mean, I don't know how you work DC stuff with them. Maybe you're going to go back to
back to Injustice.
Yeah, you're going to ditch Mortal Kombat and go back to Injustice. Maybe
Mortal Kombat could probably use a cooling off.
I think it could, and I think sales for MK1 have shown that maybe there could have been some more time between entries. But they said that they're sitting with Rocksteady working on character design and story. Said James and I sit with literally the guys that run the studios underneath JB, whether it's NetherRealm or Rocksteady. We sit with them and talk about characters and stories that we're interested in and that they're interested in. So it's not just, I don't think they're just being dictators and saying this is how it's going to go. No. They're working together with the studios.
Gunn loves video games. He has made, he worked on Lollipop Chainsaw and other stuff. Like he's not going to just like come in just for a power play. He's gonna want to make something that he would want to play. Mm-hmm. Like that's the attitude James Gunn has when he does anything, in my experience. Mm-hmm. So he's gonna make something he would want to watch as a fan of Superman. He's gonna make something he would want to watch as a fan of space opera stuff. And a fan of 70s rock.
He's all wrapped up in Suicide Squad. Do you think he might return to that by any crazy chance?
That would be a tougher sell to the bosses, I think.
I think so.
I think if he gets... I know he said his Suicide Squad movie is canon in certain ways to the DC, his new DCU. Uh-huh. I would imagine he will want to revisit that at some point because kind of the team of misfits making good is sort of his bread and butter. Mm-hmm. And if that becomes like a staple of the new DC film universe, then yeah, it would make sense to go back to that. Because the other thing is, if you made a Suicide Squad game out of his Suicide Squad, other than Harley, it would be unrecognizable.
Yeah, you're right.
Compared to the previous
game. Yeah. That would be far more gritty, I would assume.
Far more gritty, and also it would not be this nonsense. It would not be... You would recognize him as Captain Boomerang because he'd be dressed as Captain Boomerang, not in this like...
Instead of a truck driver.
We're too cool to dress like our actual characters thing.
Yeah.
I think it would be fine. And we'll see what they do.
It can't get worse.
Yeah, this is definitely, it's got to be.
This is an improvement.
Rock steady bottom.
Yeah, this is James Gunn working on DC video games is an improvement.
Yeah.
Period. It can't get any worse than it is right now. Yeah, so
also, like James Gunn, that's a track record with no failures.
Yeah.
Like he is
fearless.
He has not made a wrong move since Guardians 1.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. They got the right guy in charge. We'll see if they can make it happen.
100%. Like I have every faith that the man who made the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special can make a great Superman movie.
I believe you. And then our final news story for this week's episode is all about NetEase. NetEase is a Chinese game publisher that over the last 5 years or so has tried to stretch out and work with the West a lot more. It bought a bunch of studios. It bought a bunch of IP. It created a bunch of studios with icons like Suda51 and some other Japanese guys that are like big-time reviled developers. And now NetEase is starting to pull back. It all started with closing down the U.S. studio that made Marvel Rivals. So the day that it was announced that Marvel Rivals had 40 million players, NetEase dissolved the U.S. studio that worked on the game.
Yeah, which was really a support studio. It was not the main studio.
Right.
The main studio is in China.
Is in China, yeah.
But it is weird that you wouldn't want some kind of, I don't know, American subsidiary sort of holding the ground down. At least the company in the same country as the parent company of the license.
Right.
Because the other thing that came out this week was that the NetEase boss almost killed Marvel Rivals
right.
when he found that they didn't own the IP.
I mean, how did you not know you didn't own the Marvel IP?
That is a very interesting thing to not know.
You'd think you'd know. Khalid Twilight says maybe NetEase will be the new console maker, the Chinese console maker you talk about. It is possible, actually.
They are definitely on the list.
Yeah, I mean, that is a candidate for sure. Yeah.
But we talked about, I mentioned last week, I think, that like or whenever we talked about the Marvel Rivals news, that like they are apparently pulling out of North America, and they've been shutting things down for the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And now it looks like they're just going completely back to China-centric development entirely.
Yeah, it really feels that way. Why do you think this is happening?
Because they realize they don't need satellites.
Yeah.
They realized through Black Myth Wukong and all these other like successful Chinese exports, I think they've realized that like the global market will buy Chinese-made video games, and they do not need
Americans
some kind
presenting
of
them.
way to ease them in. They can
Right.
just show them, look what we made, and people will buy them because they look cool.
Right.
Which is, I think, correct.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I do wonder, though, if you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Because if you think about it, if you don't have that office in the U.S., and you could cut it down to where it's like 3 people or whatever, you're probably going to be traveling to the U.S. a lot then to promote your game and to do things around your game. The other thing, too, is that Marvel Rivals, I haven't seen the data, but my guess is definitely over 50% of that audience is from America. And probably 70% of that audience is probably from the West in general. To not have somebody in those markets seems a little short-sighted maybe. But to your point, maybe they're like, you know what, we've been running this thing for 5 months now, and
I think a lot of that is, I think they don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the business they get outside of China is gravy.
And if they're not here's the other thing: if they were making physical products, it might matter.
Right.
Because of tariffs.
You got tariffs, you got a distribution chain, you have imports, you have export. I mean, that becomes a whole different. Physical objects become a different thing. But
they're not.
You just put it up, available on Steam, and if people buy it, they buy it. If they don't, they don't. Like, who cares? I mean, they do that already with a bunch of stuff that's basically untranslated.
Yeah.
They do it with a lot of the porn games on Steam.
I'm surprised that NetEase made these big bets and then bailed on them so quickly. I mean, it literally spent billions of dollars buying studios, establishing studios, starting games, 50 million here, 25 million there, and it just, out of the blue, it just decides it was a terrible idea. It's pretty bizarre.
Well, there may also be a political element to it, where like, okay, the West is about to get real economically unstable, so let's just back away
and watch,
see what happens, and we might be able to pick some things up for much cheaper than we did last time in a minute. That's
a good point too. But it is crazy. You know, you figure you're celebrating 40 million, big milestone, you're all fired.
Yep.
What a day in that office it must have been, in the U.S. office for NetEase.
Yeah, it's like, huh. All right.
So imagine if you were part of that team and you work your ass off for 2 years on Marvel Rivals, it becomes a gigantic hit, and as soon as it does, you get fired.
Yeah, you thought, you're like, okay, well,
we're good now.
Be doing support stuff for the rest of this whole thing, and
and
we're the English-speaking crew with, so we can interface with the Marvel stuff and the Marvel team. And
NetEase was like, nope, we have iPhones.
We're good. we have ChatGPT for that now.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, it's kind of crazy what's happened, but the truth of the matter is that Marvel Rivals is a gigantic hit.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be all along. How could it not be? Unless it was just abysmal.
Well, we saw Avengers.
Yeah.
It had to be a good game.
Avengers still sold pretty well,
It did sell very well, but it didn't last.
Yeah.
It had to be a good game.
Yeah.
And it was.
And it is, yeah. I mean, it's my favorite It's my favorite hero shooter. I declared that during our Game of the Year awards last year. It is my favorite hero shooter to play. I'll admit, since I said that, I think I've played it twice, but I just don't play hero shooters a lot in general. So they did a good job on the game. It is a really good game, although, obviously stealing pretty much everything else from Overwatch was...
well, Overwatch wasn't using it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, that's the latest on NetEase. In fact, I do wonder, because NetEase was also like... they weren't just doing games. Like, I think they also... Didn't they own Fanbyte, that gaming website that Ryan Stevens worked on?
They really went in hard.
And I know a bunch of Fanbyte people got laid off. I don't know if Ryan is still there or not.
I don't know. Fanbyte got gutted.
It did. Yeah, that was maybe a year or two ago, something like that. So anyway, lots of trickle-down effects for stuff like this when a company from outside the U.S. decides to leave.
And Kali makes a good point, too. Domestic consumption is non-existent in China per capita. Onshoring the jobs is their only way to survive the tariff wars, which is probably accurate.
Yep. I think I saw...
Losing more American jobs with that tariff thing. Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
And by everybody, I mean someone very specific.
Rigor Mortis UK, thank you for Twitch Prime. I think I saw somebody else up here. Yep, Emperor Dread, thank you for Twitch Prime as well. So anyway, I think probably politics have at least a little bit to do with it.
Yeah. At the very least, economic. I mean, the economic windows are shifting, and NetEase is obviously going to see that and be as agile as they can to survive it.
Yeah.
And they'll probably be fine. Obviously the people that got fired are not going to be fine, but in that regard. But like, it's a move that doesn't not make sense.
Yeah.
Given the situation.
Other than the big investments that they made over the last few years.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things you can't fall into the sunk cost problem.
Mm-hmm.
You
you're
can't
right.
do that. Like
throwing bad money after good.
That's how Warner Brothers
money
got in
after
this
bad.
situation.
Yeah.
You know, they've already sunk $100 million in that Wonder Woman game. For
Yeah.
what? For
and
what?
we heard that like 2 weeks ago, and then they waited 2 weeks to kill it.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy. Okay, let's move on. We're going to review Civilization VII here on GameFace, episode 422, like we used to in the old days, meaning like 3 weeks ago. Matt, I've been kind of surprised at the lack of chatter and interest around Civilization VII. It does not feel like it usually feels after there's a new Civ game out, where I see people talking about it on social media, getting wrapped up in it, sharing their stories about it. It kind of feels like it's come and gone without much of a wave.
I don't think that's correct.
No?
Partly because I was looking at videos of it. My YouTube algorithm is half Civilization VII videos
Really?
now. Because I looked at a couple of things to
Right.
get it. But now it's just and like I'm talking about like 3-hour video. Like,
Oh, wow.
like,
I mean, I could see that.
there are tons and tons, and not just like, oh, here's my playthrough of Civilization VII. It's like, here's a 3-hour video about strategies to use for this leader and
With this
with
era,
and
and
it's like an hour per age, you know, like that kind of thing. And I've put them on in the background a couple times, but no, the community is active around it. And to be honest, I don't remember that much buzz in the mainstream from 6 either at the time. But that was a long time ago.
I do, because I've been working with Civ 7 now for the last couple of weeks, and so I'm doing constant searches on my PC for Civilization, and so it pulls up all the stuff that we did for Civ 6 and stuff that I worked on for Civ 6, and it definitely felt like it was a bigger deal.
Well,
for
Civ
sure.
6 launched in better shape. Mm-hmm. So Civ 7, I think, has been. It seems pretty widely believed that it is an unfinished game. It's not very hard to believe that, having played it. You know, like clearly it needed a little more baking.
I mean, I haven't had any bugs or anything.
I'm not talking about bugs. I'm talking about how the systems work with each other and how
balancing stuff.
Not just balance, but in terms of like, there's no reason for this to be here, or like this one. If you pair this civilization up with this leader, you can't beat them. Mm-hmm. So that's a balance problem. But like. It's like things where it's like, did they intend for these things to work together the way they do? Because it feels like it's kind of a cheat, or it feels like this is so pointless that why is it even here? That kind of thing. Sort of like when like 5 launched and like winning through like the cultural or religion. You remember where they added the thing where you could win by like basically like you sort of radiated culture or religion, like you and
right.
like it spread across the, and like you could just win that way
right.
by like just keeping
you
your
just
religious
take
people
over
happy.
the world, yeah.
And like everyone's like, what the like, you know, it was just
no
like,
guns.
Like the new concepts just didn't quite mesh into the main. And I think you've got that problem with the diplomacy thing in this one too, where it's like it feels so divorced from the rest of the game, but it can have huge consequences for the rest of the game in ways that are not clear until they happen. And that's not really a great way to run a strategy game.
Yeah.
And some of that's being mitigated by the fact that the community is sort of figuring out, okay, this is how this works, and if you do this, this will happen. But there's no real way to know that beyond trial and error. And that's not a great way to run a grand strategy game. You know, like you want your decisions to make sense the first time you make them, just to at least some degree.
Yeah.
And you know, you spend the first game kind of playing the diplomacy stuff, being like, I don't understand what this is really going to do. And then you're like, oh, that's what that does. Okay. You could have
that to me is playing Civ in a nutshell.
You could have just said that.
That's the way it always
like,
is for me.
But it's like the tutorial pop-ups don't even tell you that shit.
Yeah.
And like the Civilopedia isn't very useful. It's missing some things.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even have an entry for fresh water, which is one of the things I was most confused about in the beginning, where I'm like, okay, I want to establish a new city. And it's like, well, there's no fresh water here. I'm like, there's a river
there are
right
rivers.
there.
I can see the rivers.
That river doesn't count as fresh water? And like, no, it doesn't. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll look up fresh water in the Civilopedia.
Oh, nothing
there is no
there.
fresh water in Civilopedia. Let me look up city fountain. Doesn't say anything about fresh water. I mean, maybe they might have patched that by now because this was very early in the game's life. But I was just like, what the and like you just go someplace and some of them had fresh water, and some like they were right next to each other, next to the same body of water, and this one had fresh water and this one didn't. I did not know why one did and one didn't, and you know, it didn't really matter because like you anywhere near there, you'd eventually expand into the fresh water hex, and presumably that would be fine. And it's just like a happiness bonus, really. But like, it's just stuff like that, and it's like, well, if you're gonna introduce this new thing, you gotta like explain to me what it's doing there, how it works, and why it's different and why it's there. And I don't think 7 does a very good job of that.
Well, the big change is that we mentioned it earlier, are the 3 eras that you play through, and you choose one leader, and you stick with that leader, but throughout those eras, you can choose different civs to pair with your leader.
Yeah. And there are specific civs for each era. It's like that's why you can't pick the Americans leading out into the ancient age like you could before.
And
which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, it
in
does.
A way.
And accomplishing certain things unlocks more civs that you can use in that next era. And I just unlocked a lot of them just on accident, just playing the game.
You get like 3 or
happens.
so for each leader. And and they show all the unlock conditions when you mouse over them when you go to select them, so it's not like you won't know.
Right.
What you need to do.
Yep. And then the other thing too is that when you move to that next era, basically all the stuff that you've done is kind of wiped away.
Yeah, you keep some stuff, which again, it does not really explain
how you keep it.
You'll keep some of your units, but not all of them. Which one? We're not gonna tell you. I'm like, well, that's probably because it's too it depends what civilization you're using, and they can't get that granular in the tooltip. But the way they phrase it makes it be like, we're not gonna tell you what's gonna happen. You're just gonna have to find. I'm like, well, I'm doing pretty well, and all those are gone. Okay.
I mean, they do explain a little bit. Like, they tell you at one point, like, if you want the city to come along with you, you need to incorporate the city before the era changes.
You can't be a town.
They give you a couple hints, but you're right. You do feel like you're flying a little bit blind when you come up to that first era turn, because you also don't know what to expect. Like, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, like, I think a lot of people would agree that the best part of Civ is the beginning, when you're discovering the map and you're figuring out where the opponents are, and you're
figuring out where to put your Civ
and everything else, and determining growth and stuff. And then like kind of the middle to late sort of feels like, there's a point where, and especially because in a lot of games of Civ, by the mid game you know who's winning.
Oh, you've won,
and it's just sort of like, okay, we're gonna go through the motions for the next 2 hours, or like whatever.
Yeah, now I'm gonna use the next 30 turns.
Yeah, now you kind of get to do that starting like rush like
three times,
which is sort of I think it does do it better than Humanity did it.
I agree. I like the mix and matching of it. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but it
it makes it fun.
But it is fun. Yeah. The only thing I wish the leaders got clothing changes.
Yeah.
Like I wish
when they moved to the
my
new
first
Civ.
game was Hatshepsut, and I was very disappointed when I moved to the Exploration Age that I didn't get like a Hatshepsut's exploration outfit.
Right.
Like what would she look like in the Exploration Age or the modern age? Like I think that would be cool.
It would be,
see, like modern updates. You could we probably work with like people from the culture to sort of determine what that would a non-offensive way to give Tecumseh like a modern outfit or something.
Well, it's also just ridiculous because the leaders are like 500 years old.
I imagine the leaders are supposed to be a little more representative than.
It's the eighth or whatever.
They're the spirit of the nation sort of thing.
So I guess if you're looking for realism from
Civ
I thought
7, that was me in the previous games.
But now it doesn't feel like that.
But then sometimes you're the leader, and sometimes they look at you, and sometimes they don't. Like, I don't know. It's a little weird. But.
The diplomacy is weird because it used to be the other leaders literally looked at you off screen while they were talking.
You were negotiating with them.
Now they look at the other avatar.
And you pick, like, you have the diplomacy currency which you spend to get and that's not a bad idea. One thing I really like about the new diplomacy system is that you have the denouncement, so that you can denounce a leader, which basically says I hate this person, and it lowers your trust with each other, but it makes it basically it's a way to address the long-standing civilization problem of when especially the AI, but also some human players sometimes, but also especially the AI would mass troops on your border, and you knew what they were doing, but there's nothing you could do because if you attacked first, everybody be mad because you broke the peace treaty or you were the aggressor, and if they did it, it didn't seem to really matter to the AI. The AI didn't really suffer the same consequences.
So you just move all your armies to the border.
Yeah, so you like this huge crazy buildup, and you're like, I'm wasting all these resources putting these things just in case whenever that happens, and then it would happen, and like it's just stupid. But like so now you can denounce them, and it would basically if they start a war, they basically start with what's called war weariness, that gives them negative detractions from their combat bonuses, which is a nice way to finally kind of like discourage massing on the border. And there are counters to it, but it does cost a lot of diplomacy currency. So if you're countering the denouncements, which I do sometimes because I also put things on them. One time Tecumseh was mad that I had troops on his border, but it was because I had troops outside areas of my two cities, and he expanded his territory straight between my two cities. So yeah, they're on the border of the territory you just pushed through between my two cities because I was trying to connect them, and now you ruined that, and I'm going to kill you.
I also found kind of a way to...
The personal grudges against computer opponents are definitely still here in this game, for me, anyway.
I also kind of found a way to kind of jimmy the game. I just would spawn a bunch of settlers and then send them out, and then like the map changes when you use the settlers, and it'll show you areas where you can incorporate a city. And I would just send them out and just incorporate cities. And now with the new resource sharing interface in this one, like you can just go and very easily like, oh, we just got this city. I can start sending resources to that city. Within 2 turns, you're getting already like the first alert that like you're expanding this new city that you got literally in like 2 turns.
Well, because you're supposed to, because the towns start with the double expansion.
Yeah. And so it makes it easy to kind of just take over the map. Like,
so that is a strategy that you do use in multiplayer that I've seen in some of these videos. You can send out a lot of settlers and get, but like obviously if you do that, they're very weak. And
you're spread thin. Yeah.
The AI just doesn't know enough.
Right. The computer is not smart enough to do it.
Not on normal anyway. I'm sure like deity level, it actually is smart enough to corral you. And the computer, by the way, does that too. The computer will establish like towns way outside of its normal boundaries if it finds a resource it thinks is good.
But the settlers,
which is actually something they've never done before, so that's an improvement. That's a smarter AI, which is nice.
I think the mistake is they provided too many potential settling sites, so I don't have to send my settlers way out on the map. Like if they can just, I own this city, they go like 4 or 5 hexes away. There's another place there to settle, and you can just.
Right, but
you
don't want to do that though, because you're
because then you can start.
You're limiting the growth of your original city. Then
well, it depends. You can divert the resources from all those cities to your original city if you want.
Well, they all do that
within
anyway.
reason anyway.
Like towns. Because you're talking about towns, right? Because towns are different from cities.
But it doesn't take long to turn them into a city either.
No,
like 5 or 6 turns.
You can do it whenever you want if you have the gold for it.
Right. Well, you can pay for it.
It's not a great idea until you've built them into some kind of functional thing. But basically, towns turn all production and everything they make into gold for you.
Yeah.
So you're basically making tons of cash off of all these satellite locations.
And at first, the only way you can expand them is to pay. They can't just produce stuff. Like you have to just spend your gold to have those city-states or whatever produce stuff. So
which is paid for by the fact that they do that.
Right. But
the spam calls have gotten so much worse in the last 2 days.
Really?
I don't know what.
I haven't had a spam call in like a year.
I get them all the time.
Interesting. And then one of my other points about it is that it feels like the diplomacy generally is like the story in a Civ game, and because the diplomacy is a little bit different, like I don't find like other leaders coming to me and telling me stories about stuff like, oh, this leader over here is conniving with this other leader and they're going to form an alliance. Like, it's just like, hey, do you want to sign a treaty? Okay. And then 8 turns later, hey, you want to re-sign that treaty? Okay. And then 10 turns after that, they're like, oh, you're kicking our ass. Let's sign a treaty for good. Like, there's no just like fun like things that they come to you with that like changes the map and stuff like that.
There are, but they're all very under the hood. Like, there used to be the thing where they'd come to you and be like, "I will give you this if you'll attack our hated enemies, the Aztecs," or whatever. You know, like they used to, like, you could bribe each other to attack each other, and now that is kind of sublimated into the city-state thing, where like when you find, previously you'd find like these independent civilizations or villages or whatever that were not main civilizations. They were just sort of little indigenous tribes sort of thing. And in the previous games, you just sort of run over them and take a couple resources, and that was the end of it. Mm-hmm. In this one, they are actually kind of functional places with functional armies and stuff. And when you conquer one, you have the option to either basically scatter them to the wind, or
you can raise them,
or use diplomacy to try to win them over, and that takes like a lot. It's like 30 turns, and you can compete with other leaders to outspend, use diplomacy and gold, I think, as well, to basically like beat them on that track. And if you win that, they are converted into a city-state. But one of the things you can do using diplomacy is to encourage them to attack other civilizations. So one of the biggest ways of interacting with the other civs on the CPU civs in my game was they kept sending these like city-state tribes to come attack me. Like there was this village with like Japanese, like it was named like Okanokomoko, where it was an Oko, I can't remember, but it was a Japanese like group of like a village.
Yeah.
And who was it? One of the other leaders took it over and just started sending them after me because they were right next to my main. They were right over here. And they were saying, so my main conflict through that whole game was with this little village that was just being supplied by one of the other major civ, and we were not at war. Like we were not I was not at war with this other civ. They were just like, go fight those guys. Like that was not a declaration of war. Between I was hostile with that village, but I was not hostile with the civ. But they were clearly being manipulated by that civ.
Interesting.
And they were on the other side of a river and behind a mountain, so I would have to go all the way around and come back up. They were like in this little like cubby hole, and digging that whole that place out was impossible. And so, but I did finally do it, and when I finally like bribed them enough to join me, amazing. Like it felt really good, but like the rest of the time I was just like, I hate everyone. I hate all of you and your stupid hats. Yeah. They all had like they were all like samurai guys in there. It was. But it was engaging. So that's the story of Civ. It's much less
overt
and kind of in the leadership back and banter,
which has always kind of been the case.
It's more the stories in Civ 6, Civ 7 you're going to tell are more this happened and these guys came over, and it's all very much on the field, which I don't mind. Like I think that's fine. Like
I just feel like it lost a little bit of personality.
I don't feel like it lost a little bit of I don't really care about that. I think that is another bullet point on the list of things that I would say is the list of ways that the game became less engaging, like in terms of like everything's happening under the hood and it's not being overt about why things are happening. And it took me like 12 turns to figure out that this village was suddenly hostile towards me because another civ had turned it hostile towards me. Yeah. Like I was like, what did I do to you? I just walked by. I didn't know you. And I was like, oh, that's what. And like, it was no indicator of that I saw anyway. Yeah. And so like, it is less overt, but it's also like it adds to sort of the opaqueness of why things are happening. And I think that's one of the things that this game needs is a little more transparency on like, this is happening because of this in a way that like makes sense by just looking at the game and not knowing the systems from experience.
I don't think you need to know the systems. This game just walks you through everything. Like it's just, there's constantly stuff popping up. Hey, do this now. Okay, I'll do that now.
Well, on the first game, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, there's so much stuff going on. There's so many systems running under the hood. You don't really have to know or master them. The game really holds your hand and like teaches you how everything works and like when you need to use stuff and when you don't.
It teaches you to do this thing, and then it's up to you to kind of piece together what it's doing. Mm-hmm. Like you can even see on some of these like the tech tree things. Like you mouse over one of the tech tree things, and it'll tell you what it does. Yeah. But like it doesn't tell you what that okay, plus 25 happiness. Okay, plus 25 what? Happen plus 25%, plus 25
overall
heads, because my happiness production right now is 3. Yeah. So is it going to be 28? Yeah. Or is it just plus 25 right now?
Or is there just 25 more people who are happy?
What does that mean? Like 25 more people through the whole civilization? Right. Like and then you go to the Civilopedia to look, and like the thing about that really blew my mind is you look at the tech upgrades and the civilization upgrades. And the Civilopedia doesn't have any cost. Yeah, because partly because cost like varies depending on what you have, and it scales to what you're producing. Yeah. But it's like if I have 15 production, and I'm thinking maybe I have writing, and then I'm gonna go and like 2 more steps up this tech tree. The third thing I want to make is this. I have no real way to know how much that's going to cost or how many turns it's going to take until I get to it. And it tells me this will take you this many turns to make because there's no built-in cost on it. And I find that very weird. It makes it very hard to plan unless you just really know the systems by heart. And that's an annoying way to build a game that takes 4 hours to play a game of. Like how many times do I need to play a 3-hour game before I know what I need to do in the first 10 turns properly? Mm-hmm. That's why I was watching these videos, because these guys have already done that for me. Yeah. And like one of them, and like no one agrees. Like one of them was like, the first thing you do every single time is you build the scout, and then another guy was like, the first thing you do every single time is you build the military.
The settler.
The first thing you do and another guy was saying exactly what you said. The first thing you do is you build as many many settlers as you can, and you settle places everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it was exactly what you said.
I mean, it's good though. There's multiple ways to win the game.
Right.
And I would argue that like I would crank up the difficulty on this game. It's
The
so
AI is
easy.
Can you set the AI separately?
I don't know. I wish it was more difficult.
Because I would say like you want probably like 2 that are on base difficulty and maybe crank a step up on one of them.
Like one of the civs.
One of them, like whichever one you want to be your arch rival.
Yeah.
Like you would basically crank that one up.
Yeah. Because I just walked through the game. Militaristically, just annihilated the map. No. It took a while, but there's no resistance pretty much at all.
I did not do military. I did cultural, and
I went back and did cultural.
I walked all over them. I mean, they didn't even.
I'm walking through it again.
They didn't have a way to stop me.
Yeah.
I was just building my city. My initial city was. It was bigger than the screen at the end of the game. It was just wonders everywhere. I was running out of places to put the wonders.
How intricate the world gets after a while, and all the little detail. I mean, just look at that unit that tile right there. Look at that. Yeah. I mean, it's
I do really like how the cities
detailed
look.
it is.
The city as you build the cities as hex by hex, by the time you've got like out to like 12 or 13 hexes, it really does look like a city.
Yeah,
it looks
especially
like a real
if you build
place.
it smart and you put like the industrial stuff on the outskirts and blah blah blah. Like,
well, then you even have the thing where like eventually you're like, I need to build over this clay pit because it's right in the center of the city, and that's too valuable. I need it to be city, and so like, then you move the clay pit out to like, and hopefully you've expanded the city out to a place where it has more space for. And that
happens with the eras too.
Yeah,
it's like with one era, you may have a tile that was on your border,
and you're like, oh, there's oil here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but everybody gets eminent domain. You know,
well, yeah, so it used to be
so.
Like it used to defend your border, so you had walls and whatnot. Suddenly, in the new era, that's not your border anymore. And you're like, well, what the hell? That tile's worthless now. So you raise it and you put an oil well in there or whatever. And now you move your defense units out to your new border. Like, I really like the new era's change. I think it makes a big difference. I hope that they keep it for future Civ games. Because to your point, it does. It refreshes the game every few hours. So it doesn't feel like, okay, I've won. Now I'm going to burn 20 turns trying to finish this thing off.
I do wish there was an option to not do it. I wish there was a kind of a classic mode where you could just sort of burn through a whole thing from start to finish. Maybe that is maybe that's coming when they add the space.
That might be
age.
tough. Yeah,
because the fact that it stops in 1950. Is like the fact that there's no space victory is very weird.
Well, the weirdest part is
so that has to be an expansion at some point.
Well, the weirdest part is if you watch the opening cinematic for the game, and I'm just gonna scan through this very quickly. The very last shot of this shows a rocket going up to space. So it's definitely coming. Like, I don't know when, but it's definitely going to happen. Like, there's definitely going to have rockets going up to the moon or something like that eventually. So it is interesting that it's like, there it is right there. You can see it. Like, it's interesting that they have it in this trailer, but it's not actually in the game yet.
I mean, that's basically the ending you get if you win by science. Kind of, it's like implied.
Okay, now we're going to space.
You win a space race in the future at some
point.
Gotcha. But it's just weird because the other games, you know, did it.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, Civ 2, like you could win by building a space station of a certain size. You know, that was cool.
Yep. This game's also wonders are a big deal, and that's the case in a lot of Civ games.
Yeah, wonders have become more and more.
It's kind of a race
time.
to build the first wonder in this game,
or find one.
Right.
Like the natural wonders are really good.
Yeah.
The best wonder in the whole game is the Great Redwood Forest, the Sequoia Forest.
Yeah.
That's like it's like three or four tiles, and they are just production.
Well,
production and happiness. It's like 4 production and 4 happiness per tile. If you can get a city next to it, ooh.
Now I get
Wonderful.
why hardcore Civ fans may say this is a little bit too streamlined. It doesn't bother me at all. Like,
no, it's not like Civilization Revolution streamlined.
Right. It's not that far. And by the way, this B-roll was all on PlayStation 5. I played this on PlayStation 5 and not my PC, and it played fine.
Yeah, I played it on PC, and it was fine. I think the interface is a little console-y.
It gets a little, like, I could see that. It gets a little hard sometimes to select a very specific tile once the tiles are really built up. It's hard to see sort of the borders on the tiles, but
just little things like, little things as someone who's played forever on PC. I'm like, how come I can't select the city by clicking its name?
Right.
I have to click
the
that's
X. Ridiculous.
That's weird, right?
That's dumb.
But it makes sense for a PC, for a console interface, because you would never
You want it to be a little more clumsy.
Well, because you're just scrolling through texts.
Right. You're
scrolling
through the tiles.
You'd just be doing tile by tile.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, I want to click the name of the banner of the city name and select that hex, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Why can't I rename the cities?
I mean, for PC, they should make those changes for the PC version. They should, absolutely.
I mean, you should be able to rename the cities on all versions.
Yeah, agreed.
That's one of the things I've always loved about Civ is renaming all this. I mean, I know, automatically try to name them the civilization I pick. Sure, that's cute. But I would always rename things, One time I played as America and everything was some version of New York. And so my first city was New York and the other one was New York. And then it was New York. And I was like newer New York, newest York. And everything was just a variant of that through the whole game. Funny. And I'm like, that was a way I amused myself. And I'm sorry that's not in this one.
But overall, I enjoyed my time with Civ 7. I'm still playing it.
Yeah,
I'm on my second game now, and
another game has sort of absorbed my entire amount of free time right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just a bad time to try to be hooked on any game.
Right. Well, it's also like, I could spend 3 hours playing a Civ game, or I could go cast a bunch of fireballs, or I could go get on a pirate ship. And it's like there's a couple of things that are just taking precedence.
A little higher priority. But overall, I would recommend this, and I would recommend it to old school fans of Civ as well.
I feel like you probably want to wait for a couple updates.
It'll be improved for sure.
It'll definitely be improved. I'm gonna say Civ 5 style. Maybe wait for the first DLC pack, which is it's coming in like March or April or something. It's on the way. Mm-hmm. I think they are going to definitely, now that it's had contact with the teeming millions, I'm sure they will take the feedback on. They've always done that.
I don't think people would regret getting it now, though. I think it's
still
a lot of fun.
Probably not, but it's so expensive.
It's
so expensive.
It's a $70 game.
$70, $99 if you want the deluxe, and then it's like $120 or something if you want the full season pass with all the announced DLC included, which to be fair is all coming this year. I mean,
to be fair, Civ is one of those franchises that pretty much has unlimited replay value.
Yeah, I mean, if you like this, it's gonna be a staple,
and it will be improved. Like Civ 6 from launch to what it is now is like night and day.
Sure.
Like they've added entirely new modes.
But that's kind of what I'm saying is like you could just go play Civ 6 and wait for this to sort of finish its
because the other point is there are a lot of really good games out there right now that you could be spending money on, and Civ is always going to be there.
Yeah,
and there's not going to be another Civ for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a long time. Yeah, Civ is going to remain relevant for a long, long time because they don't make these every year, right? And it's actually unfortunate that it's releasing this kind of nest of all these other really good games and this flood of other games because I certainly don't dislike 7. I like it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably the weakest of the games I've played this month in terms of like the big new releases. It's just not quite on par in terms of a kind of judging it, especially by its predecessors. Mm-hmm. Or just judging it by Civ 6. It's just not. It didn't blow me away the way almost everything else has this month.
I was a little disappointed in the graphics. I mean, they're still fine. But
good.
I expected a little more.
They're a little messy in places. I do enjoy, there's a lot of personality in the leaders, despite the fact that like they don't really interact with each other too much. There is a lot of personality. I think Machiavelli's great. Like he's constantly scheming and stuff. And even there's a couple of leaders. So there's a militaristic version of them and a cultural version, and they
I think there's 5 different leaders that have a different version.
Differently.
Yeah, they do.
Like you can tell which one they are just by their animations. It's really well done.
Yeah.
And I like that they speak their actual languages and when they introduce themselves, and then they just don't really talk again. There's a lot of all negotiation is sort of like And the other thing I would say is I'm a little shocked by how little Gwendolyn I forgot her name. Brienne.
Oh, Brienne of Tarth from she's the does the voiceover.
By how little Gwendolyn Christie talks in this game.
She's good when she does talk.
She's great, but like she just like reads like a quote when you upgrade a Civ, upgrade a tech, and she reads like one line from the description of the civilization when you have a load screen, and she narrates the opening, and like that's kind of it. Mm-hmm. Like I was surprised she didn't have a bigger, or at least like let her read the whole flavor text.
Right.
In the load screens or for the civilizations or something. Like I don't know, she's really good and I wanted to hear her more. Yeah. And she just wasn't in it enough.
I'd agree with that. So I wouldn't say too enthusiastic thumbs up from GameFace, but
thumbs up, but not like
there's other better stuff maybe to spend your money on right now.
Yeah.
And I'd agree with that.
I didn't expect the Metacritic to be as low as it is on this one.
It's surprising.
I was worried about it. That's why I didn't jump on it immediately.
I wasn't. I really thought it was a 9. Like,
nah, I was worried about it. It's an odd-numbered Civ.
I got lucky because I wanted that game. That's how the drafts work sometimes.
It's weird because it's like odd-numbered Civs have
for some
Civilization
reason.
3. Civilization 1's kind of like, oh, we're figuring it out. Civilization 3 is like, well, this isn't Civilization 2.
Yeah.
Civ 5 was, and then like now Civ 7's like, oh, it needs some work. Whereas the other ones, can anyone just like do like a remaster remake of 2? Could I just get that? I just like to play that again.
I mean, it's probably my favorite one still.
No, it's definitely still my favorite one. That's the one that I almost failed high school because of. So.
All right, well, there you go. That's Civilization VII, 2 moderately enthusiastic thumbs up from GameFace.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, all right. Whatever numerical equivalent, I'm like, yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we're going to review Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. The title's so long, I couldn't even fit it in the upper third. Unfortunately, I've only had 2 hours to play this game. Matt has played a ton of it.
I have played about 25 hours.
Wow. I didn't even think it was that long. I didn't think it even had that much content in it.
I mean, it is if you do everything. Just like every Yakuza. It's a Yakuza game.
Yeah.
It's like you can probably get through this in about 20 hours if you beeline it. Or you can just... you can go to Honolulu for the first time and accidentally do so many things that you've maxed out your pirate infamousy for the rest of the game before you even do a pirate Coliseum battle. So my first pirate Coliseum battle, I got the remaining XP I needed to max out my 5-star pirate rating. And like... That's like the implication of the story at this point is that I'm a newbie pirate that no one knows, and I have to work up and get my reputation up. I'm like, no, I am already the best pirate in the world.
That's
like,
ridiculous.
The pirate rating says I am the best pirate in the world.
Stolte69, thank you for Twitch Prime. It's crazy how you always play games like this way. You just like hang out and just make your character crazy OP, and then just walk through the rest of the game.
Yeah. Although to be fair, he's pretty strong to begin with. Like there haven't been a lot of super challenging fights in this. Really, just
it's to me, it's a button masher.
It is somewhat of a button masher. Although I've found some pretty solid. Every once you find like one strong enemy about every 20 minutes or so, and I have found a really good juggle combo for him that is in his Mad Dog form. That is basically you're dead if I get you in it, and it's not like. It's still a little loosey-goosey in the gravity of how they fall out of a pop-up that you don't always get it. But when I do get it, I'm like, okay, that's 2 of their life bars gone. I got them after this. And the ship combat is... there were people in the previews for this saying that the ship combat is as good as Black Flag. That is a lie.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. Yeah, I only fought 2 of the ship battles.
I fought a lot of ship battles. I have full high-powered lasers instead of cannons on my boat. I can melt enemy galleons. And I can go up to the guys. There's like floating. There's like bad guys that are like extra challenges, and then there's like floating yellow ships that are supposed to be like. They're kind of like the terrors of the seas sort of things, like from Black Flag. And I've just been going up to them, it's like
just sawing them in half.
They're gone, and it's over. And like the thing, so the ship battles are not actually very involved. They're sort of like you have forward.
The
guns.
boarding is more than I thought it was going to be.
So the place that this outdoes Assassin's Creed is the ship management. And the crew management, because you get to choose every crew member is individual, has their individual stats and personalities and abilities. You get to choose whether they're on the side, which side cannons, the machine guns, and then you get to choose whether they're on the boarding party, who leads the boarding party. The leader gets if they have certain characters have abilities as squad leaders, and then when you do the boarding. Everybody you've specifically chosen to be that, you get like this little cutscene of them all swinging in like it's very dramatic. It's like two wrestling stables facing off.
It is kind of. A
lot of times they'll be like have their own their
crew,
their own theme. It's like, okay, these guys are all like disco guys, and we're all after them. And so there's a reward, and everybody individually levels up, and there's morale for everybody differently. And if somebody's morale gets too low, you have to go give them gifts and make them happy again, or they won't fight as well.
Yeah.
So you actually get involved and sort of aware of all your different.
And the fights
characters.
are just long. Like in Assassin's Creed, they lasted like 3 minutes or whatever. Now the process is like 10 minutes.
I do not have that issue.
Well, no, because you're OP. Yeah.
They all die very quickly.
Yeah.
I have his gun, because you get a pistol that you like you charge up with Y. So mine's fully maxed out to like this triple. If I triple charge, I can kill 14 people in one shot.
My God.
So basically, I just do that first, and then all the normal crew guys just fall over dead, and I just have to kill the bosses.
It's an interesting way to play games for sure.
Now I didn't really intend to do that this time. I just was having a lot of fun in Honolulu.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
This is the best game I've played all year.
Wow.
This is my favorite game of the year so far. This is also, I will go this far, I think this is the third best Yakuza game.
Wow.
I think this
Big
is
words.
I would only put this behind 0 and Kiwami 1.
Wow.
It's a ton of fun. There's a ton of different things to do.
The variety in the game is what struck me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of it's pretty fully baked.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the thing,
Well, they've been doing a lot of this stuff for so long.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff has been around forever. They are recycling a lot of stuff from Infinite Wealth, because it's obviously the same location.
Yeah.
It is a direct sequel to some degree. People do talk about Ichiban and like the events of Infinite Wealth.
Yeah.
Some people say that it spoils the ending of Infinite Wealth, but I have not finished Infinite Wealth, and I have no idea what those spoilers are. So I'm going to say you're probably okay unless you go back to play Infinite Wealth again. Then you're like, wait a minute, this is going to be this. You know, as I think the reason he's shipwrecked at the beginning of this game is shown at the end of Infinite Wealth.
Oh, I see.
So I guess it's a spoiler that Majima shows up and gets shipwrecked.
So you still don't know some of the plot, even after how much you've played.
No, because he has amnesia. He doesn't remember who he is at all. So
so even as much as you've played, they haven't resolved that yet.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
You have gotten back to that island where the Yakuza and the cult are disposing of nuclear waste, and they all.
It's just a crazy sentence.
Because Majima had established his construction company there, so they all were his workers. Formerly his Yakuza underlings, but now they're working for him as a construction company. And you go back there pretty early, and that kind of sets up the main plot where they're like, oh my God, you don't remember any of, like, how he's like, no, and like the way you're reacting to me, it sounds like I was kind of an asshole. Because so a lot of people I've seen kind of like, I don't think I want to play a game where I'm Majima the whole time, because he's a crazy murdering psychopath.
Yeah.
So he's not in this because he has amnesia, and he's found by this kid Noah on a beach, and he kind of gets involved in like their family and like trying to figure out who he is and what happened. His hot sister who just like stays behind to run the bar
and wears the same outfit every day.
Well, it's island life. They all wear the same outfit every day except for you. And I do love that you get a different outfit for when you're in Honolulu and when you're being a pirate.
Yeah.
You get a full pirate outfit for that. Yeah. And then in Honolulu, they're like, maybe you should put normal clothes on.
Like a shirt.
But now I've been playing, so you unlock all kinds of different things. And so now I wear my pirate outfit at sea, and when I'm in Honolulu, I dress like a vampire.
Oh.
So he's got a full vampire coat with the makeup.
That'll fit right in Honolulu.
And so now all the cutscenes are him like having like all these like normal to everyday interactions with people, but he's dressed like a Castlevania character, and it's very funny.
That is funny. This game's pretty funny.
It is very funny.
I laughed out loud a couple times.
There's a lot of good jokes in it. Like, it knows it's ridiculous, and it's trying to be ridiculous, and it gets there pretty often.
Yeah.
It makes fun of kind of the Yakuza, like, turgid melodrama thing a lot. Where,
it does,
even at the beginning, at the end of, there's a whole musical number at the end of Chapter 1 where they sing a big pirate song. And then at the beginning, like Majima's doing, like, this thing where he's sitting in a big chair telling you, kind of like, oh, I suppose you're wondering how, like, this was 6 months ago. And at the end of Chapter 1, he gets up out of the chair, and he's like, all right, that's good, right? We're good, wrap, done. Like, it's like a TV show. It's ending. Right. He's like, all right, another chapter's coming up, but you can save the game and go take a piss if you want. Like, and he just like leaves, and he never comes back.
Yeah, that was like his confessional.
That framing device never returns. As far as I'm on chapter 4 now, and it's just not.
I mean, I definitely haven't seen it. I didn't play it that far.
But he's like a much nicer person in this. He's vicious, and he can fight like nothing, and he uses a knife. There's still the Yakuza staple of like no one gets killed,
right?
Even though you are stabbing people with swords. Like, I have definitely killed many people in this, but then they just get right back up, and there's like, oh, I can't believe I let you kill me with that knife to my face, kind of thing. Or shoot me with a cannon. Somehow the pirate Coliseum is not lethal, even though like the big backstory for the guy, the bartender who is the kid's father. Yeah. His whole backstory is he was betrayed in the Coliseum years ago, and 2 of his friends on the boat died. And it's just like, How? Because that apparently can't happen in this game. But it's a lot of fun. You end up going to Honolulu to find someone who can upgrade the ship, because the ship can be upgraded in a number of ways. And I just stayed in Honolulu for like 10 hours
and just milked
doing side story, because you get to recruit your crew, and they want you to recruit 15 crew members. By the time I left Honolulu, I had 80 crew members. I was just like, oh, this is fun. This is like Pokemon for like doing like weird little like tasks.
Yeah.
And he is an animal lover, because Majima has always loved animals in the games. And so you have a little zoo back on this island.
Yeah, you raise a
with tons of
tiger
animals.
and a chicken.
Little tiger, who's, by the way, the tiger's name is Goro, which is also Majima's given name, Goro Majima, which he doesn't know at the time. So it turns out to be a coincidence that the tiger's name is Goro, and then they named the boat after Goro, the Goromaru. So technically the boat is named after him, too. He finds that out when he goes to the Yakuza island. And he's like, oh, that's weird. Isn't that weird? So the tiger cub, which the kid insists is not a tiger, just a cat. And no one corrects. Everyone just looks at him like, all right, kid, whatever.
It's a cat.
So the tiger, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think the tiger is voiced by the same voice actor who's voicing Majima. And he doesn't even try to sound like a cat. He just goes meow, purr, grr, and it's like, it's so funny.
It's funny
because
I laughed out loud at least a couple times in the first couple hours.
The absurdity is very good. So so it's just it's like every Yakuza game. It's a big sprawling, tons of things to do. Every imaginable mini game. You've got the baseball mini game, except now you're blowing up explosive barrels to open treasure chests. You've got the golf mini game, which is oddly unchanged. Pirates like golf too, I guess. You've got the kind of the Coliseum replacing the fighting Coliseum.
You got the cooking stuff.
Cooking stuff. Every kind of like shogi and mahjong and darts and poker, and I mean just everything you can think of.
I was appreciative for the gameplay variety, because honestly, the combat in this, it just felt like it was just a means to an end. It was just so easy. It's like I just could mash buttons and just
get
win.
further.
Yeah. So eventually it gets to the point where you actually need to
if you're trying to fight some of the bounties, early on it's nothing. But like eventually I did need to learn how to really juggle people and hit some things. Now, to be fair, at this point, anyone who doesn't... the stronger enemies have little shields next to their names. Anyone who doesn't have a shield is going to die in the first hit. Yeah. Like, for me. He has
you especially.
For me. No, I mean for me. Specifically for me. Like if I run into it... Because one of the complaints I do have is there's... At no point do the random enemies wandering around the street, and there's a lot of them, do they leave you alone. Even when there's no... Like, 9 out of 10 groups of thugs wandering around the streets of Honolulu, they are... I can literally finish that fight in 0.5 seconds. Like, I hold Y, he charges up his dash thing, I dash through them all and kill them all in one hit with a dash, and it's over. Like, it takes longer for the fight to start and then
do the cinematic.
And him to do his little hi, I killed you. Like, that takes longer than the fight now. And it's gotten to the point, he does get a Segway, like this like crazy Segway you can like upgrade into a giant pirate. Like, it gets like huge handlebars and flags and exhausts. It's crazy.
Wow.
But you can get on that, and you can just sort of outrun them, and it doesn't matter. And a matter of fact, you can plunk a point down on the map and hit auto drive, and it'll just drive you there. Yeah. So it's very easy. Same thing was in Infinite Wealth. And you can fast travel through the taxi stands, which is like $10. And early on, you're like, $10? That's like a ton. And now I have like $400,000, and like every ship I sink gives me like 4,000 more. I'm just like, all right, sure, I'll just buy the taxi stand at this point. Like, why not?
Yeah, you see in the upgrades now, from what I played, the upgrades are pretty simple, but they're there.
Yeah, they're all... Every unknown one beneath the health boosts are more health boosts. Is that, it's nothing like crazy. There's a bunch of health stuff. There's a bunch of, things that'll help with like, boost, food heals you more. You can go to restaurants without having lost any health, which is mostly useful for completionism, because there's challenges for eating every single item on every single menu at every single restaurant in the entire game, which is going to take forever if you have to get hurt before you do it every time. There's stuff for doing, for all the cooking, for all the, there's a lot to do. And I will say, I am maybe 50% done with the challenges because the challenges give you pirate infamy points, which is how one of the ways you level up your pirate infamy score. My pirate infamy score has been maxed for like 4 hours, and I am maybe halfway done with all the challenges. It does still keep track of how many pirate points you have.
Yeah.
So maybe eventually that will matter, and there will be more stars beyond that. Because sometimes Yakuza does like to go to 10 stars on things, and the pirate infamy thing only goes to 5. And I'm like, are you going to spring an extra 5 stars on me at some point here, like late in the game? Because that would be in character. I don't know.
Well, I think one thing we've learned here today is that the game does not scale.
No, it doesn't really scale. It's. I mean, I haven't done the really hard stuff in the Pirate Coliseum. Some of that stuff might be more up to things. But
here's the other part: horticulture. This game has so much stuff in it.
And that's how you get you can get a lot of stuff for cooking that way.
Yeah. Pirates.
The other thing, one of the other things I really love, because it reminds me of like the good part of Shenmue. Which is always sort of the ancestor of these games.
Yeah.
In certain areas, like when you go to Treasure Islands, you basically get off and do like a little gauntlet where you have to fight a bunch of guys, and at the end is a treasure chest. Some of those and some big ship battles will pit all of your crew versus 100 or more enemies.
Oh wow!
Not all at once, but you have to beat 100 enemies and maybe more later on. But they start with 100. And they show all your your a full crew of your ship is like 30 characters, and they all come out, and all these guys, and they all face off, and it's like, holy shit! And it's just this huge brawl, like it's like a Dynasty Warriors brawl, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
It's really cool, and it's also a really good way to level everybody up fast. Because even if your characters, and one of those did actually almost turn against me because it was down. Every single one of my crew guys had been killed except me, and it was down to me and 2 bosses, and I couldn't get through their defense, and I had to use a super ability for the first time, like in the whole
ever.
Because you have a support crew where you can, once your voltage meter fills up, you can hit up and activate their abilities. And that's the first time I ever had to do that, or I was probably going to get killed.
Wow.
And then on top of that, there's other things. I have a cursed violin that summons ghost sharks to kill my enemies, which is awesome. And there's like 3 more magic instruments that summon more things to kill. Like they really did.
They leaned in.
They leaned in and actually did turn out a pretty solid supernatural pirate yarn in a modern day setting, and it all kind of works. Like.
It's a crazy game.
I adore this game.
Yeah,
like it's not
fun.
It's not like it's not. If you don't like the other Yakuza games, this is not going to change your mind. Probably.
Yeah.
And it is not a substitute for Black. Like if you hated Skull and Bones,
this
is not going to fix that for you. Like Skull and Bones still does have better ship combat than this. I would say. Yeah. And and we're. Luna's into the TV today.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Luna today.
She saw the tiger.
She's totally into this. I don't know if you can see her on that camera.
But she's up against the monitor.
She's into the pirate ships for some reason. But I mean, I only played a couple hours of it. I had a ton of fun with it. I do wonder. I mean, you've played it a bunch, but I do wonder if you get to like that 10, 15-hour mark, if it starts to wear a little thin. But
I still enjoy. And like if the kind of the general like out in the world gameplay does, just go do the story.
Yeah,
and it'll like give you more structure and give you something else to do, and probably introduce a new gameplay system you haven't had yet.
Even early on, I was able to find other things to do to break stuff up.
Yeah, there's always something you've like. Oh, I haven't been doing that for a while. I should go do that. So there's always something else. It's just like all the Yakuza games. And it's just it looks really nice for the most part. It's the sailing is not open world. It's like you get little maps and you actually the boat moves really slow. So there's all these rings you have to sail through to like speed.
Yeah, they give you like turbo boosts,
which is weird. I wish the ship just went faster.
Yeah,
and you do have a turbo boost that you can use once, and then you have to use up fuel tanks to like instantly refill it. And then you can pick them up. I've never even come close to running out. It's only really necessary if you're, maneuvering quickly around big ships that you're fighting, which has only happened a couple of times. But I don't know. I really enjoy it.
This is an unexpected game. It's just so bizarre. Like only Sega would give this game a green light.
Only Ryuga Gotoku team
would make the game in the first place.
And I wish. Like especially Western developers would study that team because look what they did here.
The output,
because a lot of it's just reusing assets and like there's not a lot of new work in here in terms of gameplay design and like the ship stuff is really all the new stuff. Honolulu is basically a rework. Even though there's a lot of characters that return, there's a bunch of characters that come back, even from previous games that weren't in Infinite Wealth. You're really playing fast and loose with the wires.
I don't know what
kid.
Luna's up to today. She's crazy, doing all kinds of stuff she's never done.
Unplug a camera here, but and you see like cameos from previous game characters that come back. And actually, pro tip: the big fat guy, Kama, I can't remember. He's the weapon maker from the previous game, and he's been around. He tends to conveniently show up wherever the protagonist of the Yakuza series happens to be. This game, and he's the one you go to, and he builds weapons. In this one, you just have to go to him, and you I think you prove that you're a certain level of something, and he joins you. And his attack level looks really bad. He's carrying a ship cannon.
No.
He is the best boarding crew guy in the game so far.
Well, I mean, you also pick up kind of like a bazooka, like cannon thing that you can actually shoot by hand.
You can have that in the ship combat, but I'm talking about when you board the other ship.
Right.
This guy he's carrying a literal cannon, and when it hits, it explodes and knocks everybody over. I'm like, oh, this guy's the best guy on my fucking team. You look at his stats, he thought he was terrible, but no, that guy and the guy with a chainsaw are my stars, absolutely. Oh, and the one girl with a shotgun, which seems like cheating, but fuck it. So yeah.
I mean, in this game, everything, nothing matters.
It's piracy. It doesn't matter. So yeah, it's I.
So basically, what you're saying is the 2 hours of fun that I had continues on.
Oh, it keeps going. I think.
Yeah.
Put it this way, we're going to talk about Lost Records next, and I didn't play that because I was playing this. I meant to play Lost Records all week, but at some point I just was looking at, because these are right next to each other.
Right.
Because they're both L.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I play Lost Records? And I'm like, why would you?
Yeah.
And I just played, no shade to Lost Records, but I was having so much fun playing this, I didn't want to play something else.
Well, it worked out because you played this and I actually played Lost Records.
Yeah,
so
that was going to happen.
It all came out in the wash and worked out perfect. So I wish I didn't play enough to be able to recommend it, although I will say, I had a blast for the first couple hours. Matt has played a ton of it. I mean, it's a pretty strong recommendation from us. How much was this game, actually? 70. I don't remember. $70?
Yeah.
That's a little steep, maybe.
No, it's a full-fledged game.
Yeah,
full-fledged Yakuza game, no question. I mean, I maybe wouldn't pay the extra for the deluxe version, which gets you I think gets you more outfits, and it gets you. Because I haven't really used other outfits other than the vampire outfit. No outfit for the pirate part makes sense, other than his pirate outfit. Really, to me.
Well, no, of course. But does it matter in this game if anything makes sense?
No,
not really.
He doesn't. That's the coolest outfit. Maybe you might there's another tattered pirate outfit you can get through playing some of the mini games that kind of looks like Jack Sparrow. That would make some sense, I guess. And there's a ton of different. You can change his hair. You can change his eye patch. You can change his makeup. I had to dress in hostess drag at one point to get a cat to come home with me. I don't know why that was. The cat wouldn't follow anyone except unless they were a pretty woman. So he put all the makeup and all the outfit on, and he went out, and I went out, and then the cat went home with me. So
this game to a T.
Whatever you need to do.
So there you go. That is Like a Dragon Yakuza Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii.
Yep.
Craziest title for a video game ever, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's accurate.
Yeah, it definitely tells you
what you're buying.
You know what you're getting into when you get this one. That's an enthusiastic thumbs up from Matt, and mostly from me as well, but based on much less play. So
apparently it's 60.
It is 60. I just bought it. I didn't even pay attention to it. That makes more sense to me, honestly. Mm-hmm. But again, I've only played a couple hours. But yeah,
I mean, I'm waiting for the time when just everything's 70.
Yeah, because it's coming. It is for sure. All right, let's move on. Matt teased it very nicely. Next up, we're going to talk about Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. It is the next adventure franchise, choose your own adventure franchise, from the team who kind of started it all. They created Life is Strange, and that's since been handed off, and other developers are working on that, but that studio is Don't Nod, and they have launched a brand new franchise. I think it's hoping turns into the next Life is Strange, and I'll just say...
It definitely seems like... They definitely seem to be trying to set up a world here.
And they do, quite successfully. So this game is a game that takes place in two different timelines. You're seeing right now the game starts... You're sitting in a parking lot in your hometown outside your favorite bar that you and your friends used to go to as young adults. You have not been in town for a really long time, and you are meeting a bunch of your old friends from high school at this bar. And as it turns out, back in 1995, you were very awkward and you were, a young teen who didn't have a lot of friends. You met this group of sort of punk rock alternative kids in your town. And your town is this little place in Michigan that's basically just a stop off the interstate, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Like, the kids hang out at the Blockbuster. It's called something else in this. That's right off of the interstate. And that's kind of where they hang out because otherwise their town is nothing.
Right.
Although I will say this, Matt.
Like in Half Moon Bay when everybody just hung out at the Safeway.
Right.
Because it's the only place.
This game literally shows like 5 locations in the whole town. Like, it's not about like learning the town, because like a couple of the most recent Life is Strange games have been the opposite of that. Like,
yeah, the town is like a character.
It's a character in the game. In this town,
certainly Granite Bay was.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this, that is not the case. It is just a blank canvas basically to have the story play out. And so you get to this bar, you walk in, you meet the locals, you find out that one of your friends is already there. And then the game starts cutting back. And generally, I would say probably 70% of this game is played in 1995, and the other 30% is in present day. And this game isn't present day. It's set during the pandemic or towards the end of the pandemic.
It looks like it's fall 2022.
Yeah, roughly.
Because that's what the date said on the flyer.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Which is funny because you probably wouldn't put a date, a year on the Halloween party flyer, right?
Yeah, I look back through my old punk rock flyers for my bands, and we did always put the year on them for some reason. I don't know why.
If you're doing a Halloween flyer, it's like, well, clearly it's for this Halloween, not like next year.
I honestly
and you're going to tear it down by the time when Halloween's over, so why do you need to say what year? It's like, that's just for time travelers.
Matt, I have no idea why we did it, but we did. It's funny looking at those flyers.
Marty McFly appreciated your specificity.
I'm sure. You. So anyway, this girl is named Swan Holloway. She is awkward. She's a teen. One thing I like about this game is that the people feel real. They're not all beauty queens. They're not all these perfect sort of images of who people should be. The main character, she's overweight. She's awkward. She doesn't have any friends. She eventually meets this group of friends.
That's really good. I mean, both because that means they didn't have to write the actual copy for the back, but all those backs were so blurry you couldn't read anything anyway. Like, that's a nice touch.
Yep. And so back in 1995, she finally meets this group of friends and has her first circle of friends, and they become close very quickly. And then something happens that they agree with each other that they will never talk about again. Cut back to mostly present day in the bar. You meet the first person who has agreed to meet you, and she shares with you that somebody has sent her a package. And it's like 40 years later, 30 some years later, and someone sends her a package. Now, Bloom and Rage is the name of the band that they form in the game. So eventually when you meet all your friends, they're already in a band, and you offer to like film their music video or whatever, and you end up becoming like the keyboard player and a part of the band as well, and the band is called Bloom and Rage. And so 30 years later, one of the girls in the circle of friends gets a package from an anonymous source that just says Bloom and Rage on it or whatever, and it freaks her out. And so she breaks the rule of not contacting all the other friends and contacts them and says, hey, we need to meet up. And so that's where this all happens. You are waiting to meet people at this bar to talk about why your one friend has said, hey, we need to break this agreement that we had and we need to get together and talk about it. And that's basically the gist of the game. But again, I would say that you spend the bulk of your time back in 1995 in this part. Now, this game has 2 parts. This is tape 1. The second part is tape 2. Tape 2 comes out on April 15th, I believe. Mm-hmm. Tape 1 took 6 hours, almost 7 hours to finish, which is really out of the ordinary for games like this. The one thing I love about this game, I am a child of the 90s, and it is just soaked in 90s whatever juice. They do a great job of plucking out like all the iconic things from the 90s. The horrible fashion, the awkward haircuts, the weird clothes, Tamagotchi like you just saw, the Third Eye books that you just saw there. The whole game is just saturated in that stuff. And on its own, if you're from the 90s and kind of grew up in the 90s or were a young tween in the 90s, this is just a trip back in time. In fact, there was a couple times where I felt like this was like Shane Satterfield, the video game. For starters, her room is exactly like my room in my mom's house. My room in my mom's house has the arched ceilings just like this. And my room still looks just like this. She, as you're about to see here, is a budding filmmaker. And her dad bought her a camcorder, and she, for the most part, is just doing dumb crap, going out into the woods and filming birds and stuff like that. Once she meets her friends, her way in is like, hey, let's make a music video. So they do. They go out into the woods to make a music video. They get out there. They find this dilapidated cabin, and they decide that they're going to make it their hideout. And that's where the other angle of the story starts to come into play. It is made by the people who made Life is Strange, so no surprise that there's some supernatural stuff in this that I'm not going to spoil. But once they find that cabin out in the woods, and I will say, this game is kind of a derivative of so many different things. But once they find that cabin out in the woods, that's what kind of sets the story off in that new supernatural direction, where you're going to find out what it is that they have agreed to not talk about again. And that's sort of how the game works. It jumps between the bar, where you're talking with all your friends as adults, sharing the stories, and then it goes back into 1995, where you mostly play. So in present day, it's mostly just story stuff. You're going through dialogue trees and making selections in the conversations. The actual gameplay part of it happens in 95, and she is a budding filmmaker, and it is built into the game, the mechanics of making films. Matt, you definitely need to play this game. So you have a camcorder, and you can turn it on and record whenever you want, whatever you want. Now, eventually, the camcorder does get full, and you have to start deleting some footage out of it, but it can hold a lot. And you make films. So you take your shots, you go to an interface, it shows you all your shots, and then you can reorganize them. Now, you can't trim clips. You can just organize the order that they're in, and you create these little mini films. And as you play the game, you start to realize, okay, I can't trim the clips, so you start being smarter about how you record them. You only record stuff that you really want to be in your films, because you can't edit it out later. And you basically take a bunch of clips, and you get, when you film stuff that you're supposed to film, you get a little check mark, and there's like lists of stuff in each area you go to. It's like, hey, now you're at the Blockbuster. There's 6 different images you need to take at the Blockbuster. You're in your room. There's 8 different pictures that you need to take in the room. Here's your cat. You need to take 5 pictures of your cat. Now you're out in the wilderness. There's 10 different birds that you need to get footage of throughout the course of the game. You do all that stuff, and you go into an interface where you can move the clips around and create your own movies, which is really freaking genius. And again, as you play, you start to think like somebody who works in production. You're like, I don't want to spend a lot of time recording clips full of BS, because later on it's going to make my movies suck. When I put them all together, it's going to make them awkward. So eventually you start to learn, like, okay, I go somewhere, I get my establishing shot, then I get my wide shot, then I start getting more detailed shots, and you stack those shots in order so that they make sense, so that they tell a story. And it's really freaking cool. I've never played anything like this before. Now, I will say this. As the game goes on and it gets more into the supernatural stuff, the camera stuff does go away a little bit. Especially there's the middle third, there's not a lot of camera work. In the early part of the game and the end of the game, there's a ton of it. And then also towards the end of the game, you finally get some of the more like generic adventure game puzzles. But for the most part, that stuff isn't in this game at all. Like, you don't have like, take this item over here, or solve this stupid like padlock puzzle, or like, none of that stuff really happens in this game until like towards the end of the game, which I thought it was pretty interesting how it could stand on its own 2 feet with the mechanics that we're showing you right now. Now, another way that this game innovates is in the conversations and how they work. So you will be planted in a situation with people all around you, and you can scan the environment and pay attention to who you want to. As you pay attention to a person, options will start popping up on screen that let you reply. And so you can scan the scene. There's 4 people in the scene. Go to each one of them, listen to them for a while. It will give you a lot more dialogue options that you can then choose your own adventure with. And again, that's an innovative way to handle sort of the mechanics and the UI for games like this. So in a couple of different ways, this game is innovative. And as somebody who likes to make films and worked in production, Matt, this, just like for me, this game is right up your alley. Now, there's a couple caveats, and like towards the end, they start trying to bring in the romance angle to it. Now, and the first thing I'm going to say is that like all the girls in this are gay. Mm-hmm. Like they don't know it yet, but as you play the game, you start to realize that they're all 4 of them are gay. And whether they start relationships with each other, the game tries to force it a little bit. So there's a certain point where now you're friends with all the girls and you're home, and they're like, hey, choose somebody to call of the 3 girls that you're hanging out with. And you call one of them. Once you choose that person to call, they try to railroad you down that road to start a romance. It's really hard to break out of a romance with that girl and romance somebody else once you've made that first phone call. That I thought was a little, I don't know. You don't get to see a lot of player agency in this because I feel like the second tape 2 is where all the decisions that you've made are going to start to bear fruit and sort of have an impact on the overall game. So it's kind of hard to tell right now how much of a payoff there is and sort of the consequences of your decisions. But like a lot of games from Don't Nod or from the studios that have worked on Life is Strange, it's really hard to tell a lot of times when you make a decision how it's going to impact things on down the road. And a lot of times it's completely unexpected. You're like, oh, I'm going to make this choice. It's going to make this person happy. And there's some weird thing where they're like, well, I don't like that and blah, blah. Like it hasn't solved that problem yet where the options that you're choosing aren't aligning with what ultimately plays out. And I think some of that they do on purpose to try to throw you curveballs so the game doesn't become very predictive or whatever, or predictable. But for the most part, I feel like it does work out. There's a huge twist at the end. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil that here. It does drag at times. Like once they find the cabin in the woods and they go about like remodeling it and making it like this little hideout, it does drag a little bit. And I think maybe they spend, I hate to say it, a little bit too much time trying to develop the characters in this. But again, like I said earlier, it's like Shane the video game. So you meet your friends, you form a band, you make a music video, eventually you do a concert in the parking lot of the Blockbuster video. Like all kind of stuff that I was doing when I was a tween. I was like, oh, I'm in all these bands and hanging around with people in bands and going to shows and doing that kind of stuff. It's that whole scene basically. But really what this is about is what it's like living in one of these towns where really the crux of the town is that it's an exit off the interstate. And so you have a couple gas stations, you have a convenience store, you have a Blockbuster, and that's where people hang out. When I was in high school, my girlfriend went to another high school that was like 10 miles away from mine or whatever. In her little town, on Saturday nights, they hung out at a convenience store. Mm-hmm. They all drove their cars to the convenience store, and they all sat there and hung out all night. That's what this game is about. Those kind of places, those kind of towns, and how there are people there that are trapped there in these miserable existences, and they're trying to get out. And so there's a lot of discussion in this about moving to LA or being in the band and the band going big and making it.
I went back home with one of my friends from college and her little town. Like everybody hung out at the Java City.
Yeah,
that was hundreds of people were there.
And
not just teenagers, like people in their 20s and people, like everyone was there. Like,
that's the way it was in my wife's little town too.
Like American Graffiti.
There would be like 110 people in this parking lot for this convenience store.
Yeah, I did not grow up in a place like that.
A lot of people live in places like that, Matt. Like
I know.
If you drive across country, you'll see it. Like, this is really kind of like a slice of Americana for a lot of people in America.
I've seen places, and I was like, oh, wow, I had it real good.
Yeah.
I've never lived more than like 20 minutes from an airport.
Right, or from a major city or whatever.
At some point, I think I was in my 20s before at some point I realized, like, oh, there's people that got to drive like 3 hours to take a plane somewhere.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Like you want to go to Disney World, that's a 3-hour trip to the airport.
Yeah.
And then you got to go to Florida. I'm like,
then you fly the 6 hours.
I have no concept of that. I have always lived so close to cities that like that's not. And yeah, so this to me is like as exotic as something that takes place on another planet.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like another planet when you go to these places. Don't get me wrong. When I go home for the holidays, it feels like another planet from Los Angeles. Believe me. But I've done it so many times, it's not a shock to me anymore. But like, if you were to tag along with me back to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, you would be like,
get me the fuck out of Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Vincent says, does the filmmaking matter for the game beyond did you get shots X, Y, and Z? Yes, because the videos that you create motivate people to do things. So there's a scene in this where you're getting bullied. So the one girl that you're friends with, her sister is like crazy preppy girl. He's dating the dude with the motorcycle, and they try to bully you. And so there's a lot of really positive messages in this. But eventually, like talking about the camera, she uses the camera as like a weapon. So when she's being bullied, she turns the camera on and starts filming the sister and the meathead bullying her. And she uses it as a way. They're like, oh, we're on camera now. Suddenly it diffuses the bullying. There's lots of good messages.
Good way to lose an eye.
It is. Well, yeah. There's lots of good messages in this game. I think that's the one thing I came away with playing this is like if I felt that my daughter or my son were to play this, I feel like I would be happy about that. It teaches a lot of valuable lessons about interacting with people who are different, and not just from the perspective of the outcast, but also from the perspective of the popular kids. What it's like for them to interact with people who aren't as popular. I think generally it provides a positive message for pretty much all that stuff. There's other moments in it too where it's very realistic. So there's one scene where you're talking to the girl there with the jean shorts and the black shirt, and she's like the most punk. She's like the goth girl or whatever. And you have this moment where you're talking with her and she's talking about something, and you say to her, like, well, you have the choice. And the choice that I made was to tell her, like, you're pretty, you don't need to wear makeup. Like, basically you're saying, like, you're wearing too much makeup. You're pretty, you don't need it. And she bristles. Because, and I thought about it, and I'm like, because that's her armor. Like, her makeup, her goth persona is what she uses to kind of, like, deflect people that she doesn't want to interact with and things like that. And when
she also ain't wearing it for you.
Right. Well, she kind of is, actually. Because there's romantic stuff going on here as well.
But in the sense of, like, you know...
It's not for you, it's for me.
It's not for,
I get that.
The makeup choices are not necessarily for other people.
And I was taken aback by that, because to me it was a compliment. It was me saying to her, you're beautiful. You don't need makeup to make yourself more beautiful, but that's not why she's wearing the makeup. And when she bristled at that...
Now that's 90s.
Yeah. And when she bristled at that, it struck me. I'm like, wait, she's not wearing it to impress people. There's so much stuff like that in this game where you just sit there for a second, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, at first blush, I didn't take it that way, but now that I'm thinking about it, I see what this scene was and why this scene mattered. I said earlier they overdevelop the characters. They do, but they do a great job of developing the characters in this. Like, you really build attachments to all three of the girls for all different reasons, because they're completely different. Like, there's the black girl who's living in Podunkville, and she's went through a lot of racism in her life. There's the goth girl that I talked about. There's the younger sister of the school's most popular girl who's always living in her shadow. And then there's you, the alternative type who wants to make films and is very quiet and shy and reserved. And, like, they do a great job of establishing, one, each of those characters, and two, why they became friends and how they all fit together like puzzle pieces to become a satisfying whole. And then, once you understand those relationships between all the characters, it makes it all the harder to understand how they ever made a pact that they should not talk to each other ever again. Because they become so close throughout the tape one, the first part of this game. It's hard to fathom, and then that starts to drive you. You're like, okay, well, I need to figure out what happened here, because something crazy had to have happened for this group of tight friends to disband and say we should never talk again. And that drives you through the plot as well. It is really, really good. It is definitely better than the last couple Life is Strange games, for sure. Is it better than Life is Strange itself? I don't know about that.
We'll see how it turns out.
Right, and we're not at the finish line yet. But I'll just say this tape one, really, really good. Again, it's like 6 or 7 hours long, which is very rare for adventure games. Usually that's the whole run. So you have this, and then another one coming on April 15th to finish it off, and I think all the payoff's going to be there. But there are plenty of payoffs in this as well. Again, right at the end, there's a gut-wrenching twist. I'm obviously not going to spoil that I did not see coming at all. Even once it happened, like, I started thinking back, and I'm like, were there hints at that? And I realized that there was maybe like one or two, but it wasn't overt. So I definitely didn't see the big twist coming for this first episode. But again, I'm sure I'm a little bit biased because this is a lot like my life, this game. It really is. Obviously, I'm not gay and I'm not a girl, but the rest of it is very much how I live my life. Being in this little town, being this alternative type where it was you found like the 5 other people who were
Shane,
like you.
I've been told by the internet that if a character is gay and not the same gender as me, I cannot identify with them or understand or have any meaning to what they go through in their story.
Well, they're wrong, Matt, and this game proves it.
The internet is wrong.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to fathom. And look, there are contrivances in this. Like I said earlier about the conversations where you think you're doing one thing and it turns out you get burned and it wasn't what you thought. There's lots of rummaging through rooms where you have to pick up every item and spin it around because there might be something on the bottom of the item. There are still those contrivances in these choose-your-own-adventure games, but again, I already outlined 2 mechanics that are incredibly innovative that make a big difference that I believe will probably end up being copied by other games like this going into the future. And again, as somebody who's worked in video production for 20-some years now, I appreciate that angle of it, and they did that in a very smart and interesting way.
They do a good job making the camcorder footage look like camcorder
They
footage.
do, yeah. And it's rewarding, man. Like, it really is rewarding. Like, there's when you get a film done and you don't even realize it because you're just out trying to get all the shots.
Okay.
So see, I'm scanning the area right now.
Right, but what fills them in?
You paying attention to them. Sometimes you have to wait. They'll have like a little diatribe that goes on for like 30 seconds. And if you stop paying attention to them, you will not get the option. So it's a lot of it is like focusing your attention on the right characters. There's no wrong way to do it, but it will change the outcome and who you end up having private conversations with later. Like the way I handled that group discussion resulted in me having the private discussion with the goth girl.
There's some really advanced acne tech.
Well, that's the thing I was talking about, Matt, is like...
They look like real people.
Yeah. Have you ever seen someone with acne in a video game?
I mean, not that wasn't like a punchline.
Right. She's just a character in this. And even so, when you end up seeing her later on in the game as an adult, one of the first things she does is makes a crack about how she had acne as a teen or whatever, and how she got over it and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, these people all feel real. I don't know what it's like to be one of 5 black people in a town, but I was friends with those 5 black kids in my town, and they told me what it was like, and the girl in this has been living through the same thing. It really just strikes a bunch of chords. I really enjoyed it. There again, it does drag a couple places where you're like, okay, I get it. You can pick up the pace here a little bit, but ultimately, I think the payoff is worth it. Even some of the overwrought character development in the end, I think you'll at least appreciate it, even if it wasn't exactly entertaining for you in those moments. So, oh, Link's so good. I'm downloading it right now on PlayStation Plus. I'm going to check it out. Yeah, it's... I kind of thought it was going to be really good. Like, I kind of knew what the basic premise of it was. I knew it was going to resonate with me personally a good bit. And that's always a struggle as a critic, is separating yourself from everybody else and trying to figure out if those things are going to have an impact on them like they did on you. The other thing I would say, too, is I thought the band was going to be a bigger deal. It's not. The band is the conduit to become friends with the girls, basically. And it's a thing. Like, again, like you go to practice and you make their music video, but then the band goes away for like a couple hours. And then at the end, the band becomes a thing again. You have a concert in the Blockbuster parking lot. I'm not going to explain why that happens or how that happens. And then it comes back kind of at the end again. But it's not the driving force through the game. It really is about the characters in the game.
Is the music any good, though?
It's amazing. So it is, the original soundtrack for this is great. The licensed stuff is weird. So early in the game, you go to the ice cream stand. The black girl's working at the ice cream stand. You go to order some ice cream, and they start playing a Cocteau Twins song called Cherry Colored Funk. I'm a huge Cocteau Twins fan. And I was like, wow, holy crap, Cocteau Twins in a video game. I was like blown away. I went and grabbed my wife. She's also a fan. I'm like, oh my God, they're playing Cherry Colored Funk in this game. And she's like, wow, that's insane. And then they play it like 5 more times. So it's
we paid for it. So.
Right. I feel like they didn't license a lot of music for this. The original music is good, though. Don't get me wrong. The OST is great. But they don't license as many songs as I would have liked, because there's so many great songs from the 90s, although they did license one of my favorite bands. So I'll give them bonus points for that. But it's not like, the soundtrack is not this eclectic mix of 90s hits like you might expect. It's mostly original music made for the game that fits the tone of the 90s. I really love this game. It's the best adventure game I've played for quite a while. And I do recommend it. I think for the money that you're paying for it, you get your money's worth. And there's another part. It's not coming like a year later. It's coming like 3 months later. So you can play this chunk, enjoy it, ruminate on it for a little while.
Not even 2 months.
Yeah, not even 2 months. And then, 6 weeks later, you get to finish it off. So I think they've handled this very well. I would not mind seeing other episodic adventure games be handled like this in the future. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But usually it's like, hey, here's 6 hour-and-a-half episodes instead of just like 2 big chunks. I prefer it this way. So your mileage may vary with that. But if you're into these types of games, don't not create the next wave of this genre, I wouldn't go that far, but it does push it forward when a lot of other studios making these games are just happy to kind of settle into mediocrity or into the tropes of the genre and just keep kind of working those. Don't Nod is at least trying something new. So it's good to see. And even if other studios don't copy them, it could inspire other studios to also do new things and unique things with their games, and that's how genres evolve to become something new and really cool that appeals to even bigger groups of people. So Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, big thumbs up from me. I don't know if it will resonate with you guys as it did with me, because again, it was kind of a mirror of my life in small town Americana. Some of you guys have different upbringings. You're from Europe or you're from Japan or whatever. It may be completely different for you. But I think everybody can appreciate the coming of age story. A lot of people have described it as Stand By Me with girls. That's pretty accurate, but it also mixes in like Blair Witch and Cabin in the Woods and all these other like properties, which sometimes it's a little weird. I'm like, that doesn't really fit. It does feel like sometimes they're grasping a little bit for that stuff. But overall, it was a really powerful experience that I enjoyed it a great deal, and I think that you will too. Cinetike says, I'm from Portugal. I'm interested in seeing that 90s Americana. It does a very good representation of it. Also, just the 90s, like, bullying was just a thing. Like, it's not like it is now, where, like, now people see it, they're like, that's bad, don't do that. Back then, that's just the way society was.
Although they still suspend the kid who's being bullied for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I was a skater. We'd be skating at the local college, Dickinson College, and people would drive by and throw bottles at us. Like, it was just that angle is in this too. There's a skateboarding is not a crime sign in this, and like the one girl, the black girl's a skater, and so that whole angle is a part of it. Again, it's like Shane the video game. So anyway,
the violence could break out at any minute as a kid when we were, you never knew if you ran into the wrong group
at the wrong time. Yeah. You just didn't know. And there's that sense of danger in this as well. And it really gets that way at the end when the townies start getting involved. And I'm not going to say anything more, but if you grew up in a small town, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And particularly if you were an alternative type, skater, punk, goth, any of that stuff, it could be tough living in small towns. And this game definitely portrays that, and how these people found solace in each other and formed this group almost as like therapy to help them get through living in this town. So it's really good. I highly recommend it if you like these games, or if you're just a 90s kid. It'll make you melt with nostalgia, I'm telling you. Like the beginning of the game is rummaging through her bedroom, and it's just this tour de force of 90s pop culture pretty much. It'll make you feel real good if you grew up in that era at the very least. Scorpio's Finest says, I get Stephen King's It from this game. There's a red balloon in this game. There's a red balloon that randomly, that's what sets off the whole bullying incident, is she's trying to film a red balloon. The preppy girl thinks she's trying to film her in a bikini, and that's what sets the whole thing in motion. So anyway, yeah, there is a little bit of it in this. There's a little bit of like everything. Yellow Jacket, Link So Good says, yeah, that too. Yep. Let's see. Any other questions you guys have? Don't Nod didn't make the last several Life is Strange games. I know. Yeah, they passed it off. And I think they're still the masters. I wish they had kept making them. Is this a new IP, or does it take place in Life is Strange? Completely new IP. There's no connective tissue. I don't think they could do it, because I think they've sold.
Square Enix owns that.
Yeah, they've sold that off now, and they're just trying to start their own new Life is Strange.
I'm sure it could be if they want. If they still own that, it could have been in the same universe. But
yeah, they could have done it.
Angsty teens are in every universe.
The Legacy. Shane watched Dee Dee You Like It. I don't know what that means.
Dee Dee.
Dee Dee You Like It. What does that mean?
You will like it.
Oh. We should have had 99 red balloons. That would have been a perfect point to play that song for sure.
Yeah, but nobody would have played that then, because 80s music was lame.
Yeah, you're right. No, people rejected the 80s and the 90s for whatever bizarre reason.
My roommate in 94, 95 college, like he thought synthesizers were terrible. Like he said at one point, I remember he said synthesizers and keyboards take no skill to play.
Oh, okay.
And so my friend who was in the room at the time came back a couple days later with a Yamaha keyboard and said, play me whatever. It was like 99 Loop Balloons or Final Countdown or something like that. He's like, play it for me. And he's like, what? I don't know how to. He's like, he said it takes no skill.
No skill.
It's like, so you
surely you
just,
can play
just play it for me. And he never made fun of synths ever again.
That was it. Yep. So anyway, there you go. That is Lost Records Bloom and Rage. It's available for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. I'm actually surprised there's no Switch version of this, because it doesn't push. Also, I don't know if you noticed in the B-roll, there's weird jerky stuff happening. Sometimes it will cut back to real-time graphics. Like, the lead character will, like, bounce real fast. I don't know what's going on there. Very weird. Again, I played that on PS5, just so you know. But I did see some PC footage online. It didn't look like it was having the problem. I don't know. Just heads up. That's one of the only issues I found.
You know, sometimes it's just a thing where it's like when you cut between angles, like it's resetting the physics and something.
Yeah. There's LOD issues, too. Like, it'll show a character, and, like, the print on their shirt will pop into high res sometimes.
Yeah, there's some shadow LOD issues in Yakuza Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii as well, especially when you're on the Segway.
Yeah.
But somebody actually wrote I think a reshade thing that fixes it.
Oh. I don't know if that'll happen with this game.
No, probably not. Another PC advantage there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is available for PC.
Yeah, it's on PC. I have it on PC, but I literally haven't opened it because I'm too busy being a pirate.
I'm interested to get your take on it once you give it a play.
Yeah, I'm kind of maybe we can recircle back to it when the second part comes out.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Oh, that was going to be like, oh, just play them back to back. I'm like, okay, if that's going to be 12 hours, maybe I should start sooner.
You wouldn't think with adventure games they would be that way, but this one is beefy. So, and the second part may not be as long as the first.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
It sounds. I mean, I'll play it closer to play in April when there's nothing else to play.
Yep, and we'll probably come back and talk about it again because my guess is April probably has no game releases.
Yeah, it's probably be light enough that we can do that.
Probably so. All right, there you go. We just have one thing left to do, and of course that is. It's time for Name That Game Tune, presented by Soundwizardry.com. If you need any audio, anything, go to Soundwizardry.com. They have worked on several Game of the Year contenders and winners. They have an amazing resume. They are amazing people. They do great work. Go to Soundwizardry.com if you're working on anything that has audio that can help you. They have been helping us for literally a decade. When I screw up right here on SIFTD, they have bailed me out many, many times. Good people, good company, big time talent. Go to Soundwizardry.com. Now it's time to play Name That Game Tune, where I play you 5 samples from a video game, and you try to name the game before Matt Keil. Get your headphones on, Matt. It could be a sample of the soundtrack. It could be voiceover work. It could be a sound effect. It could be anything from the game. We're going to play you 5 samples. You try to guess the name of the game. A couple things before we get going. If you have one Name That Game this year, do not play. Even if you won the screenshot version, you can only win once per year, and that is because we give away a free game if you win. It is a PC game, so if you don't play PC games or you don't know somebody that you can give the code to who plays PC games, please don't play. We want to make sure that we give the code to someone and it's going to find a home where people are actually going to use it. And then finally, the chat goes into slow mode when we play this, which means you can only input one chat every 60 seconds. So don't spam the chat with game titles hoping you guess it right. You won't, and you will lose, and somebody else will win. And the last couple of weeks, it's been this guy doing all the winning. It's really crazy. You've been on quite a run. I'm going to have to start designing this to make sure that he can't get it. I think that's what I'm going to have to do.
One of them was an in-joke, and the other one you kind of gave away.
I did give away, yeah. That was my mistake. That was last week, yeah. So...
Get your poker face on.
It's so funny how much goes into this. Like, trying to make a good game. And obviously my goal is always to try to get to, like, the 3rd sample at the very least. We'll see how it goes. Okay, Matt, let me turn up your headphones here so you can hear. Is that good?
A little more.
A little more? That good?
That's good.
Okay. Are you ready to play Name That Game?
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys ready to play Name That Game Tune? Here we go. In 3. Oh, wait. I got to get the screen up. There we go. And here we go. In 3, 2, 1. That's a short one. I'll play it again.
Turn it up a little more.
Turn it up more. Any guesses? Mass Effect 2, no. Fear, no. Final Fantasy 13, no. Metal Gear Solid 4, no. Metroid Prime, no.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 2 was my first thought.
Not Metal Gear Solid 2. Alien Isolation, no. Watch Dogs, no. Mass Effect Andromeda, no. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, no. The Division, no. Fable 2, no. It's hard to get it on that first one. It's pretty generic, like, video game.
Well, the first one should be.
Yeah. Pretty generic video game sound. Jedi Survivor, no. Nier Automata, no. Ghost of Tsushima, no. Any other guesses before we go to sample 2? Prey, no. Dead Space, no. Okay, going once. Going twice. Okay, let's go to the second sample. In 3, 2, 1, go. I'll play it one more time. Killzone 2, no. Doom, no. Uh-oh. So we might make it to the third one. And if that happens, I'm satisfied. Horizon Zero Dawn, no. Marlo Biggs and the Mask of Death, no. Apex Legends, no. Halo Infinite, no. Tomb Raider 2013, no. Sea of Thieves, no. Halo Infinite, no. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, no. That's a crazy pick. Mr. Starwalker. You must have really heard something in there that like clued you in. Blades of Steel, no. Is that the new Body Harvest, Blades of Steel?
Yeah, I don't know. Not too many crickets in Blades of Steel.
Blades of Steel. Then you got Titanfall, no. Any other guesses before we go to the third one?
Anthem.
Okay. What'd you say?
Anthem.
Not Anthem. Bullet Witch, nope. That's another one out of left field. Any more guesses? Going once. Going twice. All right, here we go to the third sample for Name That Game Tune. In 3. Exoprimal, no. In 3, 2, 1. I'll play it one more time.
Destiny.
Not Destiny. Bulletstorm, no. Death Stranding, no. Cyberpunk, no. MGS5, no. Infinite Undiscovery, no. Watch Dogs, no. Cyberpunk 2077, no. KOTOR, no. Destiny 2, no. Smart move there, though. Crackdown, no. Blue Dragon, no. We have a winner. It is Mitchell Ness. It is Horizon Forbidden West. And I didn't blow it this time when someone guessed Horizon Zero Dawn. Yep, it is Horizon Forbidden West. Good job, Mitchell Ness. Good job. And then here's the last two samples I'll play for you. The last one is obvious. Like, it was going to be a race to see who could type fast enough. Fourth one's pretty obvious, too. Here it is.
Humans, Homo sapiens.
I wouldn't know that one.
Yeah. And then here's the fifth one.
All because of a terraforming system
Well, yeah.
that's spiraling out of control.
I want to make sure people win, so I'm going to make the fifth one as obvious as possible. Mitchell Ness, congratulations, brother. You know how to get at me. You can send me a DM here on Twitch. You can send me one on SIFTD. I'm at Shane. On Twitter at Dinfire. On Blue Sky at Shane Satterfield. You know how to get at me. And you want a PC game. And it's going to be hard for me to figure out which game to get you. Robolus 9. Shane had a good poker face when someone got close by guessing Horizon Zero Dawn. That's because I blew it last week because it was The Last of Us Part 2 and somebody guessed The Last of Us Part 1 and I totally gave it away. So this time I was going to make sure that I put on the poker face to make sure people didn't get it from that. But anyway, Mitchell Ness, I know you have a big game library, so it's going to be fun trying to find something for you that you don't have already. But we'll make it happen for sure. Thanks for everyone for playing. Thanks to Soundwizardry.com for sponsoring this segment. I have fun doing this. I don't even participate, and I have fun being the person who's doing it with you guys. So I hope you guys have fun doing it as well. And again, a big thanks to Soundwizardry.com. If you have any sound work that you need, head on over there. They can handle it all. Doesn't matter whether you're working on a game or you're working on a video or you're working on a podcast or whatever. Soundwizardry.com can fix it up for you. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody that we are sponsored 100% at patreon.com/sifted. Head on over there. Give us a pledge if you can. For just $4 a month, you get all our content like mega early, way earlier than most Patreons, and we give you a bigger exclusivity period than most other Patreons. We'd really appreciate it. If you don't have any money, you can help us with that. You can always help us with Twitch Prime. If you're watching on YouTube, go down below. There's instructions down there that show you how to give us a free $2.50 every month if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber. There's ways to help us. You can also subscribe on YouTube, although I would say this, you get a better deal if you subscribe at our Patreon than you do on YouTube. It's the way YouTube sets it up. We can't give you guys the same deal that we do on our Patreon. So you will save like $1 if you sign up on our Patreon versus YouTube. But I know some of you guys like to stay on YouTube, and you can do that as well. We appreciate all of it. You can also go to donate.sifted.net if you just want to give us money, and obviously we appreciate that very much as well. So there you go. Don't forget, after we break this down, we're going to do 2 reviews. We're going to do Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Avowed, so you can look for that if you are a patron or a subscriber coming online over the next day or two, and obviously those will be cut together with much better footage, and it will show you what we're talking about as we go through the discussion. So that's it for GameFace 422. We'll be back next Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday at twitch.tv/SiftedGames at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you guys next time. Thanks to everybody in chat who made our show awesome. Link's so good. Thank you for Twitch Prime getting in there at the end. Appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great week. GameFace is up and out.